Chapter 1097. Within 10 days, the spacetime larva had eaten all 20 million hexagram stones and successfully evolved into a spacetime worm. From the looks of it, it was very similar to Baron Nash from a game that Jun Changshao had once played. It was also a creature that players called Big Dragon. Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh. The spacetime worm stood upright, and a very special aura appeared around it, causing the spatial barrier in the formation to tremble. "You can open up the spacetime tunnel now?" Jun Changshao asked. The spacetime worm said proudly, "Piece of cake." Caw caw caw. As soon as it said that, its mouth full of teeth suddenly opened and bit off a piece of the spatial barrier before chewing happily. Amazing! Jun Changshao gave it a thumbs up. With his current cultivation, he could forcefully break through space, but it was just on the surface. Everything was calm and would heal on its own. The spacetime worm's ability to open its mouth and eat a small hole was simply amazing. "Master. Where do you want to go? I can take you there." "The Soul Continent. Can you determine the specific location?" The spacetime worm could devour deep space, but the universe was so big. Without a GPS, it might not reach its destination even if it ate until the end of time. "Yes." Jun Changshao said, "Follow me." Aeon City. The 4 armies were training in the training field, and hundreds of thousands of beasts were scattered around the city. Although they looked indifferent, they would quickly enter battle mode when they received Shui Rengui's orders. It was no exaggeration. The top armies of the various states and counties were completely powerless in front of the war cavalry hall. They were even pressed to the ground and rubbed against them. "Old 3, I'm a little nervous." The Tsang San Sect disciple in charge of transporting the ores walked on the streets of the city. Seeing the wolf cavalry and ferocious spirit beasts around him, he was so scared that cold sweat broke out on his forehead. They were used to cities full of humans. Suddenly entering a place where beasts could be seen everywhere felt like entering another world. "I'm quite scared for my first time here too." The disciple called Old 3 imparted his experience. "But there's no need to worry. They're very friendly and won't attack us maliciously." Whoosh! At this moment, a stream of light flew out from the city lord's mansion. Behind it was a strangely shaped bug. "What is that? I've never seen him before." There were many ferocious beasts in the city. The disciples of the Azure Sand Sect had heard of them before, but they knew nothing about the spacetime worm that had suddenly flown out. Shwa! Shwa! Jun Changshao, who was teleported out of the teleportation array, did not greet Shui Rengui, who was guarding the city. He directly flew out of the city and landed in the area sealed by the array. "Master." As soon as the spacetime worm landed, it exclaimed in surprise, "There's the aura of my race here." Jun Changshao said, 10,000 years ago, the Soul race used the spacetime worms to break through the spatial barrier and invade the Starfall continent. "I understand." The spacetime worm said, "Master, do you want me to use this spacetime tunnel left behind 10,000 years ago to open another entrance to the Spiritas continent?" "Not bad." Jun Changshao nodded. The spacetime worm said, "Since there's already a spacetime tunnel, why don't you use it to enter? Why do you want to open another one? If we use the tunnel they open to enter rashly, we'll be easily discovered. We might even let them take the opportunity to sneak in," Jun Changshao said. The array left behind by the Array Emperor could temporarily act as a seal. If he used this tunnel to enter, wouldn't it be the same as helping them break it in advance? Go Sheng would not do such a stupid thing. "Understood." The spacetime worm said, "Master, you want to open another tunnel to sneak in?" "That's right." Jun Changshao was a little surprised. After this fellow evolved, its intelligence seemed to have increased a lot. As expected, the 20 million was not in vain. "No, my heart hurts so much." The spacetime worm said, "If the spacetime tunnel I opened is discovered by the Soul race, won't it be equally troublesome? This, Jun Changshao had considered it before. The solution he thought of was to hide in various isolation arrays after entering the Spiritas continent. There was definitely a risk of being discovered by this method, but in order to get in faster, he had no choice but to take the risk and stir up a huge commotion inside. Actually, Master, you don't have to worry. The spacetime worm said, I can open a hole, and I can also repair it. You can repair it? Of course. The spacetime worm said, Master, if you're worried that the soul race will enter this tunnel that was opened 10,000 years ago, I can repair it now. I can even repair it until it's even harder than the previous spatial barrier. Jun Changshao was overjoyed. Right away, right away. During this period, he had been worried that the seal of the array formation would be broken and the soul race would invade. If he repaired it, he would naturally be free of worries. All right. The spacetime worm dragged its huge head towards the array formation and said, Master, the array formation here is a bit of a hindrance. I have to eat it first. No, no. Jun Changshao hurriedly dissuaded it. Eating the array formation is equivalent to breaking the seal. It's fine. The spacetime worm said, the two planes are far apart. Even if the seal is broken, it will take time for the soul race to rush over. By then, I will have repaired the spacetime tunnel. Are you sure? I'm sure. Jun Changshao was a little worried and said, let me see you repair it first. Crack. 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 The spacetime worm returned to the array formation area and opened its mouth to bite off a piece of the spatial barrier. Then, several of its eyes flickered. Then, a special light gathered in its mouth and spat it out like spitting saliva. Smack. The viscous energy stuck to the chewed area and gradually spread out. In just a few seconds, it solidified into a brand new spatial barrier. It did not even look like it had been damaged. In ancient times, Nuwa repaired the sky. Now, the spacetime worm repaired the hole. Damn! Jun Changshao was shocked. So fast. The spacetime worm said, Master, do you believe me now? All right. Jun Changshao said decisively, you can go and eat the array formation. However, you have to repair it as soon as possible. If the soul race takes the opportunity to come in, you will be roasted on the oven in the next second. The spacetime worm dragged its head to the array formation again and opened its teeth. The tips of its teeth shone brightly. Crack. 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 Under the powerful bite, the ancient array formation that could have lasted for a long time was bitten off piece by piece. Its functions also disappeared in an instant. The Soul Continent. Tens of thousands of soul race experts sat cross-legged under the huge pattern. Energy surged out of their bodies and gathered together. As if turning into a huge wooden stake, they ruthlessly bombarded the invisible seal. Boom! Suddenly, the seal that had prevented them from entering the falling star continent for tens of thousands of years suddenly shattered like a mirror. At that moment, the tens of thousands of soul race experts were confused. According to their method of gathering everyone's strength, it would take at least a few more months to break the seal. Why did the seal suddenly shatter? Whoosh! The leader of the soul race experts stood up and said excitedly, the seal is broken. We can enter the tunnel to the falling star continent. Hurry! Hurry and inform the Empress. Yes. A subordinate hurriedly flew to the palace. Let's go. The leader shouted, follow me into the tunnel and head to the falling star continent to meet with the 9 temple masters. Whoosh! 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 Tens of thousands of soul race experts entered the spacetime tunnel one after another. However, they did not expect that although the seal was suddenly broken, the entrance to the other side of the falling star continent had been completely repaired. It's done. Jun Changshao stood in the area where the killing was howling. His expression was a little interesting. Just a moment ago, the array formation left behind by the Array Emperor and the tunnel to the Soul Race's continent was perfectly repaired after the space-time worm spat out a mouthful of phlegm. Baby! Jun Changshao turned around, his eyes twinkling. The various strongholds on the battlefield are protected by array formations. Can you open the tunnel? The reason why he had this idea was that the ancient array left behind by the Array Emperor was broken in just a few bites. The space-time worm said proudly, as an insect with the highest bloodline, it can even eat the deepest space, not to mention array formations. When Jun Changshao heard this, even more stars appeared in his eyes, sparkling one after another. Chapter 1098. The formation left behind by the Formation Emperor and reinforced by Shangguan Xinyao was eaten like food in front of the space-time worm. Gosheng speculated that this guy could eat any barrier that was similar to a formation, right? The answer he got was yes. This was very satisfying. One had to know that all the major strongholds on the battlefield had invisible defensive barriers. Unless a war was declared, there was no way to break them. Now that the space-time worm could do it, didn't that mean that the strongholds could enter and leave at will? He. Jun Changshao laughed strangely and said, "Don't provoke me in the battlefield's plain, or I'll visit your house immediately." The system said, "The host is very much like a villain." After the space-time tunnel connecting the two planes was repaired, Jun Changshao relaxed. As long as the other party could not enter, he had the space-time worm to drill a hole again, completely changing from passive to active. "Can you open up the space-time tunnel and then block the entrance?" Jun Changshao asked. He meant to open up a hole, then repair the source and continue along the other side. This way, he could enter and the enemy would not be able to enter through the tunnel. Yes. The space-time worm said, however, digging and repairing the hole will consume a lot of energy, and will also cause me to fall into a period of weakness. Jun Changshao did not care. As long as he could block the entrance, the soul race would definitely not be able to enter. Rest first. In a few days, dig a hole and head to the soul race continent. Now that the space-time worm had matured and had the ability to open up the space-time tunnel, he naturally could not wait to head to the Soul Race continent to explore what kind of world it was. Of course. Jun Changshao only wanted to find out about the enemy, so he planned to go alone. The sect was still focused on cultivation. With enough martial kings, Wu Huang, and top forces, he would have a good time with them. With the current strength of the sect of all times, it would not be a problem to beat any top sect, but it would be a little difficult to make an enemy of the entire world, so they did not have the ability to attack the Soul Race continent. Jun Changshao returned to the sect of all times using the teleportation formation. Then, he summoned Yuan Gongzi and the others and told them that he was going to the Soul Race continent. He also told them that they had to work hard to develop the sect in his absence. Patriarch Li Qingyang solemnly said, "The Spiritus continent is definitely filled with dangers. This disciple is willing to accompany you." "I'm going too," Yi Xingchen said. He was not worried that Jun Changshao would be in danger. He mainly wanted to go to other planes to seek excitement and improve himself through a lot of actual combat. "No need." Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "My purpose this time is to gather information about the enemy. I can go alone." He had the cultivation of the sword and martial sages, as well as trump cards such as the irretrievable saber, so he naturally didn't fear the Spiritus continent. However, he didn't know how strong this world was for the time being, so he couldn't recklessly send his disciples to take risks. The system complained, to put it bluntly, "You just don't want to bring a burden with you." Yuan Gongzi had already integrated into the sect of all times, so he was in charge of many internal affairs. Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji were also familiar with the operation of refining pills and equipment. Therefore, after everything was arranged, Jun Changshao prepared Lu Wanchu's fried rice and Lan Kang's wine before heading to Aeon City. He didn't know how long it would take for him to return to the Spiritus continent. Therefore, before he left, the upper echelons and disciples of the sect all sent him off. Patriarch Lu Wanshi said with tears in her eyes, "You must come back alive." With the disciples sending him off, Jun Changshao walked into the teleportation formation. Just as he was about to teleport, Lu Qianxian's voice rang in his ears, "This is clearly something that concerns the entire continent. Patriarch, why are you shouldering it alone?" "Because," Jun Changshao paused and said with a smile, "I want to monopolize the resources of the Soul Clan continent." It was undoubtedly easier to find the top warriors of the Falling Star continent to join forces with them to fight against the Soul Clan continent. However, Jun Changshao liked to enjoy it alone. Besides, the space-time tunnel had been sealed, so there was nothing to worry about for the time being. He had the space-time worm to control the initiative. Going to the Soul Clan continent was equivalent to finding trouble with them. The powerhouses might not be willing to follow him. After all, who knew if they would die inside? Swish! The formation flickered. Jun Changshao appeared in Aeon City and then headed to the repaired space-time tunnel area. Whoosh whoosh! The wind howled, and the sky was filled with sand and dust. His back view gradually blended into the harsh environment, giving off the feeling of, the wind is blowing, the water is cold, and the warrior will not return after leaving. Fuck! Jun Changshao roared at the camera, "I'm going there to investigate the enemy, not to throw away my life. Can you turn off the BGM? Master, when do we start?" "Now." "Yes." The space-time worm received the order and opened its big mouth full of sharp teeth to gnaw at a space barrier. Then, it continued to eat deeper into the void. A moment later, a space-time tunnel entrance with a radius of 1 meter appeared. Jun Changshao went in without hesitation. He tue. After the space-time worm dug a distance into the depths, it turned around and spat out a ball of energy to seal the entrance. Then, it turned back and continued to dig forward. The space-time tunnel that was created by eating was surrounded by colorful streams of light, giving off a feeling of being in the clouds. "Master," the space-time worm said while eating, "the tunnel I opened is protected by a special barrier and can be maintained for a long time. However, don't force your way through. Otherwise, once you leave the tunnel, you will be lost in the deeper space forever." "Okay." Jun Changshao responded and looked at the dark environment outside through the colorful streams of light. However, after walking for an unknown period of time, he found a corpse in the deeper space. "Master," the space-time worm said, "this should be a powerhouse who accidentally entered the deeper space and died because he couldn't find a way out." Jun Changshao fell silent. The corpse did not have any obvious external injuries. The expression on its face was hideous and painful. It was probably anxious to death. The space-time worm said, "It is very difficult for ordinary people to enter the deeper space. This human must have been very strong when he was alive. Perhaps, he had the ability to shatter the void. However, he did not fly to the upper realm and was unlucky enough to be lost in the endless void." Shock appeared on Jun Changshao's face. With the ability to shatter the void, he would be a martial emperor in the Falling Star continent. To die in the endless void was simply too tragic. "That's why," the space-time worm said, "before you have enough confidence to ascend to the upper realm, it's best not to shatter the void so easily. Otherwise, you will only end up like this. Can you dig a hole and bring the corpse over?" Jun Changshao asked. "Yes." The space-time worm thought and changed its direction. Then, it quickly arrived in front of the corpse. Crack! It opened its mouth and bit down. The void cracked. The corpse instantly entered the space-time tunnel. However, because it left the endless void, its intact face and skin quickly decayed, leaving only its clothes and bones. Jun Changshao was speechless. This is still a vacuum package. It did not matter that the corpse decayed quickly. The key was that the spatial ring on the finger bone was perfectly preserved. If he was really a void-shattering powerhouse when he was alive, there must be something good inside. Go Xing hurriedly peeled it off with a smile on his face. The system, to loot the crates to such an extent, it could be said that he was crazy. Chapter 1099. Pft. In the space-time tunnel, Jun Changshao spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes filled with disbelief. Just now, he had used his spiritual senses to infiltrate the space ring he obtained. In the end, there was some kind of power inside that directly backfired on his meridians. That's not right. It was very safe to loot in the past. Why did an accident happen this time? The system explained, there's an extremely strong spiritual sense seal in the space ring. It should have been set up by the deceased when he was alive to prevent others from taking it away. Jun Changshao was speechless. The person was already dead, but he still left behind a spiritual sense seal. That was a little fucked up. The system said, top powerhouses are very concerned about their own wealth. They definitely don't want others to take advantage of them, such as a crazy host. I don't believe that I can't break it. Go Xing's temper flared. He wanted to compete with this space ring. Therefore, after recuperating for a while, he continued to integrate his spiritual senses into it. As he had failed before, he was very careful the second time. Although he did not suffer a backlash, it was not something that could be done in a short time to break the strong spiritual sense seal. It did not matter. It would take time to reach the soul race's continent. Since he had nothing to do, he might as well use the space ring to relieve his boredom. Ka ka ka. The space-time worm continued to devour the deeper space. As there was another tunnel with its entrance blocked not far away, they could use it to determine the location of the soul race's continent. Just as the space-time worm was digging a hole, the soul race powerhouses from the neighboring space-time tunnel swarmed over. They had no idea that the entrance of the falling star continent had been patched up, nor did they know that someone was using the same method to reach their territory 10,000 years ago. What's going on? Why is the entrance gone? A few days later, a large number of soul race powerhouses reached the end of the tunnel and found that there was no way out. They stood rooted to the ground, dumbfounded. Could it have been sealed by the falling star continent? This is a complete spatial barrier. There's no aura of any array formation. Should we try attacking? No. If we attack violently, it will cause the tunnel to become unstable. We might be sucked into the endless void. As the tunnel had been patched up, the soul race powerhouses who had rushed over from afar did not know what to do. Let's go. A powerhouse said, return to the continent and report to the Empress. Ka ka ka. Ka ka ka. In another space-time tunnel, the space-time worm was still digging a hole. Jun Changshao was sweating profusely as he followed behind. He had been releasing his spiritual senses to confront the seal inside the space ring for several days, but he still hadn't made any substantial progress. The system said, judging from the seal inside, the owner must have been very powerful when he was alive. Even if he's dead now, it's still not something the host can break with your current cultivation level. It's better to give up. Jun Changshao, who had originally intended to give up, gritted his teeth and said, I'm going to fight you to the end. I'm going to slap you in the face with my actions. The system said, host, if you become stronger in the future, you might be able to break it open. But for now, you don't have any chance. Why was he so confident? It had already analyzed the strength of the seal in the ring. With the host's current spiritual sense, the probability of breaking it was 0. Face slapping. Under all kinds of data, it did not exist at all. Master. The space-time worm asked, what are you doing? Break. Jun Changshao suddenly stopped and changed the topic, there is a seal similar to a barrier in this spatial ring. Can you break it? A barrier seal? The space-time worm turned around and locked onto the spatial ring. Swoosh! A strange aura quickly seeped in, and with a bang, the spiritual sense seal broke. Then, he said casually, "Easy. Jun Changshao, I spent a few days and still couldn't break it, but this guy broke it in seconds. This is really a blow to his ego. The system, although I'm the system that gets slapped the most, can you give me some time to buffer? Don't slap me in the face every time." After the space-time worm broke the spiritual sense seal in the spatial ring, it continued to burrow forward. Jun Changshao merged into it without any hindrance, then laughed wildly in joy. This was the spatial ring of a powerhouse who seemed to have the ability to break through the void. The internal storage was very large, and there were all kinds of martial arts resources. For example, there was 10 million hexagram stones. Could it be? Jun Changshao calmed down and thought to himself, this person is a powerhouse from the Nine Heavens continent. It wasn't until he found a book that looked like a diary and saw the detailed records of the deceased's cultivation that he confirmed that this person was indeed a powerhouse from the Nine Heavens continent and had the ability to break through the void. Sigh. Jun Changshao sighed and said, even a martial artist as strong as this would die in the endless void. Humans are really insignificant in the vast universe. After lamenting, he happily flipped through the various martial arts manuals stored in the spatial ring. As expected of a powerhouse who broke through the void. Not only were there all kinds of martial arts in his collection, but their levels were also very high. After a round of inventory, there were a total of more than 300 martial arts manuals. Among them, there were 40 saint-grade martial arts, 6 divine-grade martial arts, and 1 above divine-grade martial arts. From the perspective of a martial artist from the Nine Heavens continent, the value of a few hundred martial arts manuals was definitely higher than 10 million hexagram stones. Awesome! Jun Changshao was overjoyed. On the way to the Soul Race continent, he suddenly obtained so many martial arts resources, and even a divine-grade martial art. It was no different from giving it away for free. There's no free lunch in the sky. It's because they're all hidden in the void. Jun Changshao couldn't wait to take the divine-grade martial art and read it carefully. He found out that it was a mental cultivation method called Tianjun Soul Refining Art, which was used to strengthen a martial artist's soul. The diary of the deceased recorded in detail that he was able to break through the void because of this mental cultivation method. However, although his soul met the requirements, his physical body couldn't bear it. He couldn't stabilize himself during the ascension and fell into the endless void. So pitiful. Jun Changshao mourned for him for 3 seconds. The system said, although the soul-molding pill can strengthen the host's soul, it's still a bit weak. This type of soul type and above divine-grade mental cultivation method is just right for cultivation. Jun Changshao rubbed his hands and smiled, if I can comprehend to the extreme like that Nine Heavens continent powerhouse, can I break through the void too? In theory, yes. The system said, however, there are many uncertainties in breaking through the void. Whether or not you can ascend to the upper realm depends on your luck. Jun Changshao said, I don't care about ascending to the upper realm, as long as I can break through the void. Even if he was given the chance to ascend now, he would decisively reject it. Because he hasn't developed into the strongest sect yet, even if he ascends, he can only wait for the bomb to explode. Swoosh! Jun Changshao thought and took out the talisman of insight, saying, then let's cultivate this type of soul mental cultivation method. Pa! The talisman was formed and rich martial arts knowledge was poured into his mind. However, when he picked up the Tianjun Soul Refining Art and started cultivating, he found that the incantation was still very difficult to understand. The system gloated, this type of above divine grade and soul type mental cultivation method, with the current middle grade talisman of insight, it's hard to see through its mysteries. Jun Changshao said with a depressed face, in other words, I can't cultivate it for the time being. The system said, if you refresh the high-level store, you might be able to get a high-grade or even a top-grade talisman of insight. At that time, you can easily cultivate it. If the host used contribution points to slap its face, it wouldn't mind at all. It would even take the initiative to pose and beg the host to slap it hard. Fuck. I really want to throw you into the Soul Pagoda and let Arya train you well. Chapter 1100. In the Sect of All Times. Yi Xingchen sat cross-legged in his room, recalling how he obtained the Taixuan Sutra in his previous life. To sum it up in one word, difficult. However, after his rebirth and cultivation, no matter how great the price he paid, it was worth it. Yi Xingchen was able to catch up and be ahead of Li Qingyang and the others because he cultivated the Taixuan Sutra more than them. This kind of martial technique that was above the divine grade was really terrifying. If Night Emperor was given a chance to go back to the past, he would still choose to fight for it, even if he would still end up being harmed in the end. Weapons and equipment could provide a martial artist with super strong combat strength, but the benefits of a secret manual of a mental cultivation method, especially a top-level one, were permanent and irreplaceable. However, if Yi Xingchen knew that the Patriarch had effortlessly obtained a mental cultivation method above the divine grade in the Endless Void on his trip to the Soul Clan's continent, and that it specialized in the soul, he would definitely vomit blood. Sigh. They were both human. Why was the gap so big? Junior brother Yi. The next day, Yi Xingchen woke up early and was about to prepare for his daily cultivation when Xiao Ziji caught up from behind and said, I just received news from Hall Master Li that a strange beast appeared in the valley of the southeast Shi province. Are you interested in subduing it? Not interested. Yi Nyo said lightly. He just wanted to become stronger quickly, return to the peak and have the ability to break through the void, then go to the upper realm to find that woman to take revenge. Okay. Xiao Ziji said, I'll go find second senior brother. He might be interested in that green eagle. Yi Xingchen, who was about to enter the experience tower, stopped and said, Green eagle. Yes. Xiao Ziji said, a big eagle that seems to be carved out of green jade. Let's go. Yi Xingchen gave up on the experience tower. Xiao Ziji was a little stunned. Didn't he say he was not interested? Why did you change your mind? This was because Night Emperor had a contract beast in his previous life. It was called the Blue Sky Jade Carving. From its appearance, it was similar to the Blue Sky Jade Carving. Furthermore, it was also subdued in the southeast first state. Old chap, after flying out of the Sect of All Times, Yi Xingchen thought to himself, could it be you? In his previous life, he didn't have any friends. He only had the Blue Sky Jade Carving to accompany him. The relationship between master and servant was extremely deep. The southeastern First Province was a bit lively recently, because in the deep mountains of the easternmost land, a bird that looked like it was carved from jade suddenly appeared. Every day, it would let out a long cry at a fixed time, and its voice would resound for thousands of miles. At first, many martial artists didn't know what was going on. It wasn't until someone rushed over and saw the green jade carving that the news immediately spread in the Jianghu. If it was an ordinary spirit beast, they might not have paid much attention to it. However, it was a spirit beast that could fly. Spirit beasts that could fly were more valuable than spirit beasts that could run on the ground. After all, after taming them, they would undoubtedly be the best way to travel. Therefore, when the news spread across the Falling Star continent, many families and sects gathered in the Eastern Ocean Fishery Province, as if they were eager to snatch the ultimate treasure that had appeared. If Go Sheng, who was trying to save the world, knew that they were going through so much trouble for a bird, he would have cursed aloud, useless fools. Hiu! Hiu! In the southeastern First Province, Yi Xingchen and Xiao Ziji were flying at a high speed. Because the members of the Drizzle Hall were providing intelligence at all times, the two of them soon reached the valley in the easternmost land. Huff! 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 Violent airwaves surged out, filling the spiritual energy of the martial artists. Junior brother Yi. Xiao Ziji looked at the dark valley and said, the martial artists should have gone in already. Coldness flashed in Yi Xingqian's eyes as he said, let's go in. Hiu. After that, he flew into the valley. Xiao Ziji was confused. Why did junior brother Yi seem to be in a hurry? Boom. Boom. The two of them kept getting closer and closer to the valley. They could vaguely hear the sounds of explosions. Then, they discovered that dozens of experts were fighting inside the valley. All kinds of energy exploded and destroyed the surrounding trees and flowers. Junior brother Yi, are you okay? Xiao Ziji had been observing Yi Xingqian. He noticed that the deeper they went into the valley, the uglier his expression became. The coldness and killing intent in his eyes grew stronger. Screech. At this moment, a clear cry cut through the dark environment and resounded in the sky. Yi Xingqian, who had always been cold, actually looked happy when he heard the sound. Strange, strange. Xiao Ziji was very surprised. In his contact with Yi Xingqian, other than when he was drunk and laughed, he usually maintained absolute coldness and arrogance. Puchi. Puchi. The sound of wings flapping came from the dark valley. A flying spirit beast that was blue all over and looked like a jade carving from afar rushed out. Its body was so big that it could carry a yard of more than 200 square meters on its back. Blue sky jade carving. Oh my god. The late night emperor's mount. It seems to be very weak. Quick, take this opportunity to subdue it. Whoosh. Whoosh. The experts who were fighting in the valley locked their eyes on the blue jade carving flying into the sky and rushed over at full speed. Night Emperor's mount. Xiao Ziji said in surprise, that's a bit powerful. Although the 10 great martial emperors of the falling star continent hadn't shown up for a long time, it didn't stop them from having super terrifying prestige in the secular world. Junior brother Yi. Seeing hundreds of experts rushing out of the valley, Xiao Ziji said solemnly, there are too many experts. Let's not get involved. Where is he? Where is he? The area where Night Emperor was marked with a dotted line. Xiao Ziji looked around and found that guy rushing towards the blue jade carving. He broke down and said, this is a bit messy. It was strange. That flying spirit beast was also flying towards junior brother Yi. According to their flying speed and route, they would soon meet face to face. The cultivators who were desperately chasing saw a streak of light flying over from the other side. It was the closest to the flying spirit beast. They shouted in unison, stop him. Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. All kinds of energy exploded in the air, forming dazzling beams of light that blasted towards Yi Xingqian. Although they wanted to stop someone from getting close to the blue jade carving before them, gathering so much energy at the same time was still very powerful. Screech! That flying spirit beast suddenly raised its head and screeched. Then, it turned its huge body and dropped down, blocking the path of all kinds of energy. No! Yi Xingqian roared. Boom! 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 Dazzling lights bloomed in the air, enveloping the huge blue jade carving. Ah! Yi Xingqian's eyes were about to pop out. The Emperor's aura in his body couldn't be suppressed and quickly burst out along his meridians and skin. Swish! At this moment, a streak of light flew out from the explosion. Plop! Yi Xingqian reached out and caught it. It was a very small blue jade carving. Because it was severely injured, it couldn't maintain its huge body and became pocket-sized. Its eyes were half opened, as if trying hard to see the person who caught it. Whoosh! Whoosh! Hundreds of cultivators rushed over. They would not allow anyone to get Night Emperor's mount. They had to snatch it back. Boom! 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 At this moment, bullets that shook the air flew past Yi Xingqian, who was floating in the air, and blasted towards the cultivators. Everyone's expression changed slightly, and they hurriedly dodged. After stabilizing his body and planning to continue charging, he found that behind the man holding the green jade carving, there was another man holding a special weapon. The purple clothes had the word ancient engraved on his chest, and the waist plate with the word unyielding iron bone engraved on it. Ga. In an instant, everyone's greed was forcefully suppressed by some force. They said in shock, "A disciple of the sect of all times. Junior brother Yi." Xiao Ziji stood behind Yi Xingqian with his AWM sniper rifle and asked, "Are you okay?" Crack. Crack. The crisp sound of bones could be heard. Yi Xingqian, who was holding the injured blue jade carving, raised his head. His eyes were filled with murderous intent as he said, "Those who heard it will die today." Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh. Violent spiritual energy accompanied by chilling killing intent instantly filled half of the sky. The cultivators felt their hair stand on end and their scalps explode. Chapter 1101. Yi Xingqian was enraged to the point that he had entered a berserk state. Why? Because the bird in his arms was the condor from his previous life. It was no wonder that he was so happy when he came to the valley. He could already feel that familiar feeling. The azure sky jade condor had also sensed the presence of Yi Xingqian. Thus, it flew out of the valley when the martial artists were fighting over it. One man and one beast. They had been separated for thousands of years. Now that they finally met again in the southeast region, the scene would definitely be beautiful. However, the martial artists from the various families and sects wanted to mess things up. They even attacked Yi Xingqian to snatch the bird. The azure sky jade condor did not want its owner to be injured. It chose to use its body to block the attacks and ended up with injuries all over its body. Night Emperor. A ruthless person who had offended almost all of the 9 great martial emperors in his previous life. How could he tolerate others bullying his contracted beast? Thus, it was reasonable for him to enter a berserk state. Junior brother Yi. Xiao Ziji opened his eyes wide. He had never seen such terrifying killing intent and anger before. It's over, it's over. Junior brother Yi is about to go berserk. Things will get out of hand. Xiao Ziji realized that something was wrong and immediately contacted the sect of all times. At this moment, Yi Xingqian waved his hand and used his spiritual energy to envelop the azure sky jade condor in midair. He then took out the True Yang sword and put on the True Yang set. His cultivation erupted as he charged over with bloodshot eyes. All of you will die for this emperor today. When Jun Changshao became ruthless, he would still be able to maintain a trace of rationality. For example, when he was in Taishan Xingzong, he only wanted to tear down the main hall and not exterminate the entire sect. However, when Yi Xingqian became ruthless, he would not have any scruples. As one of the 10 great martial emperors, he completely viewed all living beings as grass. Die. Xiao, xiao, xiao. In an instant, Ling Jian executed the single-word speed formula, and a sky full of sword qi slashed down with monstrous killing intent. When a person was in a state of rage, their strength would increase. Therefore, when Yi Xingqian used his divine tier sword moves, they were even more powerful and cold than before. Seeing this, everyone hurriedly retreated. Even the weakest of the 100 or so martial artists was at Wu Huang's level. They shouldn't be afraid of a mere rank 6 Wu Huang, but they couldn't stop him from having another identity, a disciple of the sect of all times. Because of their greed, everyone attacked and they noticed someone approaching the jade sculpture. Who knew that it would be Yi Xingqian? They really wanted to explain and say that it was a misunderstanding. However, his opponent had already executed a sword move and charged over, not giving him a chance to speak at all. Thus, he could only choose to flee. Shua! Shua! streaks of incomparably sharp sword chi shot out. Because the martial artists intended to flee, they dodged it easily. However, when they felt the killing intent sweeping past them, they couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spine. If they could turn back time, they would rather self-harm than attack Yixingchen. This was because they couldn't afford to offend the sect of all times. None of you can run away. Yi Anyo's killing intent surged as he chased from behind with the true Yang sword. Thus, the scene that appeared was a rank 6 Wu Huang chasing after more than 100 Wu Huang and even a half-sage. Whoosh! Whoosh! After running for a short while, streams of light suddenly flew over from the distant sky. The one flying at the front was emitting a powerful demonic aura. That's right. The Purple King. After receiving Xiao Ziji's voice transmission, he rushed over as fast as he could to provide support. When he saw Yixingchen chasing after more than 100 humans, he immediately tore off his clothes and shouted angrily, "This Hall Master is coming." With this roar, his demonic aura erupted like waves. Pooh! Pooh! The hundreds of fleeing powerhouses were instantly shaken to the point of vomiting blood. Then, they fell to the ground and huddled together, trembling. Whoosh! The Purple King flew over and held his hands together as he hovered above the crowd. He said coldly, "How dare you bully the sect of all times? You must be tired of living." Whoosh! 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 Jiangye, the Ning brothers, Elder Gu, and the other upper echelons of the sect of all times arrived one after another. Although there weren't many of them, they stood in different positions and surrounded more than 100 people. Speaking of which, why did the sect of all times send support so quickly? This was because Zhen Dejuan had been working hard to set up the superpowered teleportation formation. Although it didn't extend to the southeast first state, it was already very close. Therefore, when Xiao Ziji sent the news, everyone immediately used man-made spirit stones to teleport to the closest area. Of course, Jun Changshao was not satisfied yet. He would continue to set up the superpowered teleportation formation until it covered all the major states. Whether it was going out or providing support, he could arrive instantly. In the future, if it was possible, he could also open it to the public to earn martial arts resources. Everyone, a family expert said in horror, "This is a misunderstanding. This is a misunderstanding." Puchi. At that moment, Xiao Zuiji rushed over. His cold sword chi cut through the man's chest, causing blood to spurt out. Xiao Zuiji said coldly, "If I say that this is a misunderstanding, would you believe me?" That martial artist endured the pain and said, "Yes. I believe you." The sect of all times' main force had arrived. At this moment, they had to admit defeat and be terrified. Yixingchen raised his sword and swept his gaze across the martial artists who were surrounded. He said in a cold voice, "Those who attacked just now, come out now." Everyone lowered their heads. It was obvious that they had all participated in the attack. "I have sinned." Jiang Yat said telepathically, "What's the situation?" Xiao Ziji hurriedly told them what had happened. When they learned that the martial artists had severely injured a green jade statue, Yixingchen instantly went berserk. Everyone expressed their confusion. "Xingchen." Elder Gu said, "It's not a big deal. In my opinion, why don't we?" At this point, he paused and said, "Let them pay up and forget about it." Jiang Ye agreed. "I think that's a good idea." No objections. The Ning brothers expressed their stance. Under Go Shing's leadership, the upper echelons of the sect of all times were all obsessed with money. As long as there was a chance or if they wanted to resolve a conflict, they liked to settle it by paying up. Pay up. The martial artists who were trapped hurriedly said, "We'll pay up." They did not have the guts to offend a sect that dared to go against Taishianqingzong. If they could buy peace with money, they would not feel the slightest bit of heartache. The protagonists of other dimensions were either targeted or bullied by the whole world. They would be mocked by passers-by when they went out for a stroll. The martial artists of the falling star continent were so fearful. It was mainly because Go Sheng was strong and extremely protective. The martial artists of all dimensions, not to mention them. The experts of the dimensional battlefield were all terrified. No. Yi Xingqian's eyes were filled with murderous intent. They must die. If An Yo was so easy to compromise, he would not be the Night Emperor of the past. Everyone's hearts turned cold. However, suddenly, Yi Xingqian said, if you pay with spirit stones, ores, herbs, and other items, and the amount is considerable, you can avoid death. Considerable. The martial artists hurriedly said, it must be very considerable. Yi Xingqian sheathed the true yang sword and flew toward the clear sky jade carving. He left the rest to Elder Jiang and the others. An Yo. You've changed. You're no longer the Night Emperor who treated money like dirt. Everyone. Jiang Ye said, take it out. Everyone hurriedly took out all the spirit stones, ores, herbs, crystal cores, and other items they had. The amount was quite considerable. Remember. Jiang Ye said calmly, keep your eyes open in the future. Don't offend the sect of all times again. Understood, understood. Everyone said submissively and then left dejectedly. They came to capture a spirit beast but did not get anything. Because they attacked the sect of all times, they were extorted a large amount of resources. This was really they did not check the almanac before leaving the house. Chapter 1102. Sect of all times. Yuan Gongzi looked at the large pile of spirit stones, ores, and other items that Jiang Ye and the others had sent over. His expression was a little interesting. The sect that I joined relied on extortion for all kinds of martial arts resources. So shameless. Hee, I like it. Medical peak, medical hall. Yi Xingqian paced back and forth outside, his face filled with anxiety. Although he knew that the azure sky jade carving was only injured and its life was not in danger, he was still very worried. In this world, the only thing that could make Night Emperor unable to stabilize his state of mind was the contract beast that had accompanied him for thousands of years. If he also had a system like Go Sheng, he would definitely complain, no wonder he was ambushed by a woman. So his feelings in his previous life were all on the azure sky jade carving. Who can stand this? Creak. The door was pushed open. Sun Bukong pushed the door open and walked out, saying, Senior Brother Yi, the azure sky jade carving is fine. It will recover after a period of recuperation. Shua. Yi Xingqian hurriedly walked in. On the bed, the pocket-sized azure sky jade carving, whose entire body was covered in bandages, stared at the unfamiliar human who emitted its master's aura. The cold arrogance on Yi Xingqian's face dissipated, and he said excitedly, Old friend, we meet again. Screech. The azure sky jade carving let out a low cry. Although the human in front of it looked very unfamiliar, the aura he emitted was incomparably friendly. He must be the master that it had been waiting for. The bed and the door. It was about a few dozen feet away. The man and beast stared at each other. They did not speak, but it was filled with warmth. Just as Yi Xingqian and the azure sky jade carving were reunited, Jun Changshao was still on the spacetime worm's flight to the Soul Race's continent. The system said, with a high-grade or even higher-level insight talisman, you can learn any martial arts in seconds. What are you hesitating for? On the way, it patiently persuaded him. Jun Changshao pretended not to hear it. As he hurried along, he paid attention to the endless void outside, hoping that he would be lucky enough to see the corpse of a powerhouse again. Unfortunately, she never saw him again. There might be very few experts who could break through the void on a plane. If all the planes were counted, the number would be a little too large. However, in the vast universe, they were just insignificant ants. Therefore, even if they failed, finding their corpses would be like finding a needle in a haystack. Master. After digging for a few more days, the space-time worm stopped and said, "We're about to reach the deeper level of the crossing zone. The process might be a little painful." Crossing area? Jun Changshao asked, "What do you mean?" The space-time worm explained, "The two planes are extremely far apart. Even the most powerful person would need hundreds of years to get there. That's why we always choose to enter the crossing zone when we're digging a tunnel. From there, we can teleport." Jun Changshao said in astonishment, "Is it that magical?" Ka ka ka. The space-time worm continued to gnaw, and soon, an area with folded space appeared on the path. Master. This is the crossing area. Space is folded. Jun Changshao was silent for a moment before he said, "I think I understand a little." Shwa. The space-time worm slithered into the crossing zone like a water snake. Jun Changshao followed closely behind. However, the moment he stepped in, he felt as if his entire body was being torn apart. Master. The space-time worm was not disturbed and said, "The crossing process is very painful. As long as you endure it, you'll reach your destination quickly." Jun Changshao did not say anything. He endured the pain as if his body was being torn apart and flew behind it. This feeling seemed to last for hundreds or thousands of years. When he was completely free, he returned to the normal space-time tunnel again. The space-time worm said, "Master, I've already smelled the plane's aura. I should be able to reach it in a few days. Is it the Soul Continent?" Go Sheng was very worried that this guy would take the wrong path and bring him to the Valoran continent. Then, he would follow the three friends in the grass and shout, "Long live Demacia," in a very Chinibu manner. Old reader, with the author's character, he really did it because the protagonist of the third book had transmigrated to the game plane. Master, please rest assured. The space-time worm said confidently, "I'm a professional at digging holes." It had been capturing the adjacent space-time tunnel and would not make any mistakes. Trash. A bunch of trash. In the palace of the Soul Continent, Queen Rose stood in front of the seven-colored throne and angrily scolded the kneeling soul race experts. She told them to break the seal connecting to the falling star continent as soon as possible. It had been half a year, and there was no progress at all. It was simply disappointing. "Your Majesty, please calm down." A subordinate said in a trembling voice, "The space-time tunnel connecting the two planes has been opened, but the entrance to the falling star continent has been restored. We can't rush in at all." Restored? Queen Rose said coldly, "Let me take a look. If you're lying, wait for your soul to scatter." Whoosh! She disappeared instantly. The subordinate wiped the sweat on his forehead and prayed in his heart, "Please don't cause any trouble, or my little life will be over." Ka ka ka. Ka ka ka. The space-time worm was still working hard to dig holes, and it was getting closer and closer to the Soul Continent. Queen Rose, who came in from the other end of the tunnel, suddenly stopped in the tunnel and listened carefully. She murmured, "There seems to be movement in the endless void." Master. The space-time worm suddenly stopped and said warily, "There's a powerful aura around, and it seems to be able to detect my presence." Jun Changshao said, "Maybe it's passing by when breaking through the void and ascending to the upper realm. Ignore it and focus on digging holes." Yes. The space-time worm continued to work. Below the master and servant, Queen Rose was puzzled. "Strange, why is there no sound again? Forget it, forget it." She shook her head and continued on her way. In a short time, she arrived at the entrance to the falling star continent and found that there was indeed a spatial barrier. She held her chin and said, "The tunnel opened by the previous queen with the space-time worm should exist for a long time and not heal." Queen Rose helplessly returned to the Soul Continent. Although she was quite strong, she did not dare to force open the spatial barrier because if she accidentally entered the endless void, she would definitely die. Master. After digging for another day, the space-time worm said excitedly, "We're only a few dozen miles away from the Soul Continent." "Damn it!" Jun Changshao said, "We're finally there." He had spent 10 days in the space-time tunnel. During this time, no one talked to him, and he was about to go crazy. It was not hard to imagine how lonely the corpse that had broken through the void was when it was trapped in the endless void forever. How anxious it was to die. Crack. 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 The digging continued. Jun Changshao said, "When we reach the destination, try to keep a distance from the other tunnel. The entrance of the other space-time tunnel might be heavily guarded by soul experts. If they were to follow the route, they would definitely meet face to face. When that happened, it would be very awkward." Understood. The space-time worm began to change its route. At this moment, it had completely locked onto the Soul Continent. It did not need to be guided by the route at all and could open a tunnel in any area of the entire plane. "Master, we're here." Crack. Crack. The space-time worm gnawed the last spatial barrier connecting to the Soul Continent, and the dark tunnel immediately lit up. Jun Changshao subconsciously closed his eyes, the corners of his mouth rising into a smile. The Soul Continent. "I, Jun Changshao, am here." "Huh." Queen Rose, who had just returned from another space-time tunnel, suddenly sensed a weak spatial energy fluctuation thousands of miles away, so she immediately rushed over. Whoosh! The space-time worm flew out of the tunnel, and its body quickly turned pocket-sized. It said weakly, "Master, I'm too tired. I need to rest for a while." Jun Changshao flew out of the tunnel and caught the little fellow with one hand. "Baby, thank you for your hard work." With that said, he looked up at the dark space and sensed the surrounding environment. He shook his head and said, "The heaven and earth attributes here are several times thinner than the falling star continent. No wonder Queen Ling Ping, who controls the entire plane, is so weak." He. Jun Changshao covered his face and laughed strangely. "The Soul Continent will tremble from today onwards." Ga. Suddenly, his smile froze. Because a refreshing rose fragrance wafted over. The 5 fingers covering his face spread open, and a beautiful and impeccable face appeared in Go Sheng's limited field. Holy shit! Jun Changshao was so shocked that he hurriedly took a few steps back. Only then did he realize that a sexy, beautiful, and elegant woman had appeared in front of him. "Kid." Queen Rose crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked at Go Sheng with her nostrils. She said indifferently, "What did you just say?" Chapter 1103. P.S. The previous chapter has been modified. Before the space-time worm fainted, it spat to fill the entrance. The moment he entered the Soul Continent, Jun Changshao had all kinds of plans in his mind. For example, should he cause a ruckus in the various cities or head straight to the palace to capture Empress Ling Ping? No. That was too direct. It was too unconventional. He should first use the hidden cultivation technique to hide himself and carefully investigate the Soul Continent to see how strong the overall strength of this plane was. Just as he was thinking and laughing, Empress Rose had already rushed over from afar. If the Soul Continent was compared to a dungeon, the Empress, who had absolute authority and controlled the entire soul race, would definitely be the final boss. Jun Changshao, who had spent a lot of effort to dig a hole, encountered the boss the moment he stepped into the dungeon. This scene was a little awkward. Fortunately, Go Sheng did not know that the boss of the soul race had suddenly appeared. He smiled and said, "I was just saying that the world we live in is simply a paradise." This woman was definitely of the soul race. He had to pretend to be of the soul race. Otherwise, how could he investigate the enemy if his identity was exposed? That's not right. Empress Rose said indifferently, "You seem to be talking about trembling just now." As she spoke, she sized up the surrounding space and thought to herself in confusion, strange, there was clearly the aura of the spatial barrier just now. Why did it suddenly disappear? Fortunately, the space-time worm had filled the hole before it fainted. Otherwise, the situation would be even more awkward. Jun Changshao clutched his chest and said, "Every time I look at this beautiful mountain and river, my heart trembles violently. I'm also proud to be a member of the soul race." The system said in admiration, "How ridiculous." Empress Rose smiled. Under her wise leadership, the people still had a strong sense of belonging to their home. Big sister. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said, "I'm from another city." "May I ask?" Rose Queen's sexy face immediately turned gloomy, and she said, "What did you call me?" "Huh?" Did the term big sister make her sound old? Jun Changshao hurriedly changed his words and said, "Sister, I'm from another city. May I ask if there are any cities nearby?" Whoosh whoosh. Before he could finish speaking, Rose Queen suddenly waved her hand, and a vigorous energy burst out, turning into a heavy palm that pressed down. Boom! In an instant, the ground caved in with a 5-fingered palm print. Hey hey hey! Jun Changshao, who dodged in time, stood in the air and was speechless. "I didn't offend you, so why did you suddenly attack me?" Rose Queen was surprised and said to herself, "So, he's at the airborne realm." The airborne realm was equivalent to Wu Huang. "Brat. You don't know me?" Rose Queen asked. Jun Changshao said, "I've already said that I'm from another city and am unfamiliar with this place. How would I know you?" AI. The Rose Queen sighed. She had been fighting in other planes ever since she took over as the Empress, so much so that no one in the airborne realm could recognize her when she returned to her own territory. "Come down." Rose Queen waved her hand and said, "I'll tell you where there are cities nearby." Jun Changshao said, "I can say it right now. I'm not deaf." This woman attacked without saying anything. She must be very irritable. It was safer for him to stay away from her. Rose Queen frowned and said in a commanding tone, "Come down." Fuck. Did this woman think of him as a servant that could be ordered around? Psycho. Jun Changshao said with a smile before flying off in a certain direction. It was not easy to sneak into the soul realm, so he naturally would not waste time with a woman who was mentally ill. Huff huff. However, he had not flown far when a powerful force erupted behind him. A large hand with a monstrous aura grabbed him. Boom! The sound of an explosion rang out, and the space trembled slightly. The large hand condensed of energy completely collapsed into nothingness. The rolling wind messed up Jun Changshao's black hair. He stood in the air and clenched his fist. With a cold gaze, he said, "Woman, don't go too far." Boom! Ouch! Another big hand came from the other side, and directly sent Jun Changshao flying. He smashed into several huge rocks, and was sent crashing into the mountain 1,000 feet away in the shape of a swastika. "This woman is very strong," the system said. Caw caw caw. Jun Changshao, who had crawled out of the crack in the stone, said in shock, "At the very least, she is comparable to a high-level Wu Sheng." Whoosh! Rose Queen appeared out of thin air and was only half a meter away from him. She smiled with interest and said, "Little guy, you are quite good at taking a beating. Your strength is probably beyond the airborne realm, isn't it?" "Oh no." Jun Changshao was shocked. Rose Queen's smooth right hand suddenly came over. Just as it was about to touch his chest, the light of time exploded, and then there was a loud bang. Boom! Jun Changshao directly smashed the mountain and retreated with his hands crossed in a defensive manner. The expression on his face was slightly ferocious. Ta! It was not until he retreated far away that he stabilized his body. He raised his head and looked at the smiling woman in the distance and said in disbelief, "Her strength is definitely not weaker than the Supreme Elder of Taishan Shenzong. Come on. I just came here, and I already met a powerhouse of this level. Or is it that the overall strength of the Spiritas continent is so strong that any random woman has the cultivation of great perfection? Wuxia? Suddenly, Jun Changshao found that rose petals were falling from above, carrying with them the intoxicating fragrance of roses. Fuck. Boom. 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 The falling rose petals flickered as if bombs had been detonated, immediately rolling up thick smoke. Whoosh! Jun Changshao flew out at high speed, his whole body was in a mess. To be able to withstand my attacks consecutively, this kid is not bad. Rose Queen crossed her hands and said with a smile, let's see where you can run to. Buzz. The space shook, and a barrier was formed. Boom. Jun Changshao, who was running away, slammed into the barrier and was bounced back. Go Sheng, who had always been bullying others, was bullied when he just came to the Spiritas continent, and it was a woman. This was a bit too fucking comfortable. Huff huff. Huff huff huff. In the sky, large hands pressed down, carrying with them increasing power, shaking the space until it began to collapse on a large scale. Boom. 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 A strong vibration came from the ground, and large hands appeared out of thin air, mixing dust and energy, as if covering the sky. Rose Queen retracted her hand and said with a smile, you can't hide this time. Suddenly, a trace of surprise appeared between her brows. In the area of dust and energy, Jun Changshao's figure gradually appeared, wearing a battle armor and waving a red cloak behind him. He looked up coldly and said, you're so unreasonable. Go Sheng was angry. Go Sheng was angry. If his identity was exposed, it was understandable that he was attacked by the powerhouses of the Spiritas continent, but this woman was obviously teasing him, and he could not tolerate it. Jun Changshao. When had he suffered such humiliation? Clang. Jun Changshao put on the True Yang mask and took out the True Yang sword, turning into an emotionless killer. He said with a cold voice, don't think that I won't dare to hit you just because you're a woman. Chapter 1104. Jun Changshao boasted that he was a gentleman, but if he was provoked, he would even dare to hit a woman. For example, the former palace lord of Juda Temple and Fang Lingyu were both top beauties. In the end, one was brutally abused, and the other was directly killed. Now, this woman, who exuded a high and mighty aura, repeatedly mocked him just because her cultivation was a little stronger. This was intolerable. Watch carefully. Today, I, Jun Changshao, am going to hit a woman again. One-word sword technique. Whoosh 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 whoosh. In an instant, dense sword aura was unleashed, as if it carried the power to tear space and pressed forward. Rose Queen was surprised and said, this kid is a swordsman. In the beginning, she thought that Jun Changshao was just in the airborne realm. After a short fight, she found that the other party was very resistant to beatings and had decent strength. Now that he knew the way of the sword, it was even more incredible. The Spiritas world was very scarce. If one simply cultivated there, it would be very difficult to become stronger. Therefore, they had to invade other planes to improve their cultivation. A Spiritas warrior like Jun Changshao who had strong physical strength and also knew the way of the sword was very rare. Thousand flower-plucking hands. Powerful energy burst from Rose Queen's body, turning into slender white hands that grabbed at the sword aura sweeping over. Smack. 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 In an instant, the thousands of sword aura flying over were caught by thousands of jade hands. Kid. Rose Queen smiled and said, you're a talent. This smile was very charming. Readers who saw this would definitely say in this chapter, I'll protect the Queen's smile. Jun Changshao was not confused. Instead, he frowned. With his current understanding of Ling Jian's divine art, even Lan Jingting of Taishan Xingzong might not be able to easily deal with the one-word sword technique. The system said, this woman's strength is stronger than Wu Xing's great perfection. The host can either use a stronger trump card or run. Jun Baobao felt bitter. It was not easy to sneak into the Spirita's world by relying on the time and space bug, but he met a terrifying powerhouse right at the beginning. This was really bad luck. Boom! Boom! Bang! At this moment, the sword chi that was suspended in mid-air was crushed by her hand. Swish! The Rose Queen appeared in front of Jun Changshao again. She waved her hand and placed it on his chin. You are now my servant. She smiled and said, you are now my servant. Are you crazy? Boom! The violent energy suddenly exploded in midair. Jun Changshao turned into a stream of light and rushed out of the rolling energy. With the combination of his wings and flight ability, he fled towards the endless sky as fast as he could. Gou Xing decided to make a strategic retreat after realizing how powerful this female psychopath was. He would only make further plans after he had a better understanding of the situation in the Soul Continent. As for using his trump card, please. I've only been here for a few minutes. If I use my ultimate move, how am I supposed to survive in the Jianghu in the future? At this time, whether Jun Changshao could leave or not depended on whether Rose Queen was willing or not. She had turned into a red stream of light and chased after him. Obviously, she wasn't willing. Brat. Things that I set my eyes on can't run away. Big sister. Sister. Girl. Beauty. I was wrong, okay? Don't chase me. Jun Changshao howled as he frantically tried to escape. Boom. He crashed into the spatial barrier again. Swish! Rose Queen took the opportunity to chase after him. She pointed two fingers in the air, and a red stream of light that looked like a rope flew out and tied Jun Changshao up in an instant. Fuck. Jun Changshao cursed, this is too much. It would have been better if he hadn't cursed. Once he did, Rose Queen became angry. She pointed two red streams of light again and tied him up like a big dumpling. The system said, the host is being abused. If it weren't for his equipment, Gou Xing might not even be able to defeat Lan Jingting. Now that he was facing the stronger Rose Queen and didn't want to use his trump card, he deserved to end up like this. Swish! Rose Queen flew over and said, I've given you a chance to escape. Jun Changshao couldn't move at all. He glared at her with the resentment of a young man and said, if I wasn't injured, I wouldn't have been captured so easily. Oh. Rose Queen looked up and down and said, you're injured. Jun Changshao said indifferently, if I'm in my best condition, I can press you to the ground with one finger. The system said, you've been captured, but you can still act tough without batting an eyelid. Admirable, admirable. Ha ha ha. Rose Queen covered her mouth and laughed, so, I'm taking advantage of you. Jun Changshao proudly said, if you have the ability, then let me go first. I'll wait until my injuries are healed before I fight with you again. If I lose, then I'll admit defeat. So, you'll only be willing to be my servant if I defeat you in your best condition? Rose Queen said. That's right. Jun Changshao said. Swish. 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 The red light instantly loosened and disappeared without a trace. After being freed, Jun Changshao shook his body and said, 3 days later, at this place, you and I will fight again. He could tell that although this woman was teasing him, she didn't have any ill intentions. He would use the promise to calm her down first. As for 3 days later. Sorry, the number you have dialed is not in the service area or has been turned off. Okay. Rose Queen agreed. This guy was a bit arrogant. He had to be convinced with absolute strength. Goodbye. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said. Swish. Rose Queen stood in front of him and said with a smile, however, I'm worried that you'll break the promise. I have to follow you at all times these 3 days. Break the promise? Jun Changshao said angrily, you're humiliating my dignity. So what if I'm humiliating you? Rose Queen crossed her arms and looked at him with her nostrils again. Under her domineering aura, there was a, if you keep talking, I'll beat you up, aura. Jun Changshao shrugged and said, the legs are on you. If you want to follow me, then follow me. Ha ha ha. The system laughed out loud. As a very professional face-slapping system, no matter how funny it was, it wouldn't laugh unless it couldn't help it. However, speaking of which, why don't I sympathize with the host, who is so thick-skinned to the point of using his face to take a slap, and instead, I feel a little happy. Fuck off. Jun Changshao cursed in his heart and got up to leave. Rose Queen really followed him. She even kept a distance of 0.5 meter to 1 meter from him. Jun Changshao was speechless. How can I take the opportunity to slip away when she's watching me so closely? Sigh, sneaking to the Soul Continent this time is a failure. What's your name? Handsome. This name doesn't sound good. Seeing that your face is white and clean, I'll call you Xiao Bai from now on. Xiao Bai my ass. You're too casual in naming me. Also, why did you give me a name? Do you really think of me as a servant? Chapter 1105. Whoosh! Whoosh! On the slightly desolate land, the wind whistled from time to time, rolling up dust and weeds, making the atmosphere of heaven and earth even more strange. Gradually, Jun Changshao and Rose Queen came out of the dust. The two agreed to fight again in 3 days. However, at this moment, Jun Changshao was thinking hard about how to get rid of the other party, and then explore the Soul Continent freely. Follow this direction and you'll see a city, Rose Queen said. Jun Changshao was silent. He felt like a prisoner being escorted by her. No. Jun Changshao thought, if I can't get rid of her, I'll find a chance to suck her into the vacuum. Then, why didn't he use it immediately? Because the other party was too strong, Go Sheng wasn't sure he could handle it. For example, when facing the Sky Battlefield Ghost on the battlefield, he relied on the Purple King to wear him down in the early stage to finish the job. Hateful woman. Don't let me seize the opportunity, or I'll send you to the Heaven Origin Soul Suppressing Tower for training. Thinking of being restrained just now, Go Sheng decided to capture her. He must take the Soul Suppressing Whip from Arya and whip her himself to relieve the hatred in his heart. Xiao Bai. Rose Queen said, what are you thinking? Jun Changshao planned to continue to remain silent, but suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration and said, I'm thinking of a way. A way? A way to your heart. Rose Queen stood still, her bright eyes filled with surprise. There's a chance. In Jun Changshao's sea of consciousness, lines of vulgar words of love flashed past like a bullet scream, and then he instantly caught one and said, do you know why I'm afraid of you? Rose Queen said, because I'm strong. No. Jun Changshao said seriously, because I'm afraid of my wife. Rose Queen lowered her head. Jun Changshao was immediately delighted. Just as he was about to continue saying vulgar words of love, he saw the woman suddenly clench her fists and said angrily, a servant dares to tease me. Boom, the ground cracked, and dust flew. After it dissipated, Jun Changshao was lying in the deep pit with his 4 feet facing down. There was a gourd-shaped bump on the back of his head. Several hundred li away, a city made of black ores appeared. Jun Changshao walked in with a big bag on his head. He found that most of the soul race people were in human form. They were no different from the humans of the Falling Star continent. According to Souls 1 and 2, the Spirita's true form was also in human form. Only when invading other planes would they use their souls to occupy other people's bodies. Aren't they too weak? After casually observing the city for a while, Jun Changshao found that the strongest Soul Clan warrior he encountered was only comparable to a martial disciple. Even the small cities in Yangzhou in the southwest of the Starfall continent had at least martial masters. AI. Queen Rose sighed. Surviving in such a harsh environment, it's not easy for our soul race to produce a talent like you. Ever since she ascended the throne, she had been fighting in other planes and paid little attention to the mainland. This time, when she came to a remote city and saw that the overall strength of the people was low, she immediately felt a strong sense of self-blame. He Woody's hidden cultivation technique is indeed powerful. This woman with a powerful cultivation base didn't find out that I'm actually a human. Jun Changshao secretly rejoiced. In fact, in the Spiritas continent, as long as one didn't claim to be a human, even if one didn't use the hidden cultivation technique, one wouldn't be discovered. This was because this world became stronger by invading other planes. Not only did it have human characteristics, but it also had human aura. To put it bluntly, it was because after a long period of conquest and obtaining human strength, the genes and bloodline of the Spiritas were constantly changing. For example, if Queen Rose, who had an extremely strong aura, went to the human plane with her true form, there would be no doubt that she was an alien. I want to go to the outhouse. Go. Oh my God. You have to follow me to the outhouse. I'm afraid you'll run away. Jun Changshao and Queen Rose appeared in a remote city, immediately attracting a large number of residents to watch. After all, one was handsome and extraordinary, and the other was beautiful. Of course. They would never have thought that it was their empress, because ever since she ascended the throne, she had been elusive. Queen Rose definitely wouldn't say loudly, "I'm your empress, hurry up and kneel to me." Instead, she walked on the streets incognito. However, every time she saw her people with extremely low realms, her heart ached. She thought to herself, I've conquered countless planes over the years. Although I've obtained countless martial arts resources, it's just a drop in the bucket to improve the overall strength of my people. Ever since she became the fourth empress, she had a grand plan in her heart to make the continent stronger in the shortest time possible. For this reason, she stayed in other planes and didn't hesitate to take the lead in charge. It was because of her strength and actual combat strength that Jun Changshao, who had a cheat, was defeated. Don't you need to find an inn to stay and recuperate? Queen Rose asked after walking a few rounds in the city. That's what I was thinking. The two of them came to an inn. Innkeeper, we want 2 rooms. One is enough. Jun Changshao looked at Queen Rose in surprise and thought to himself, are the women of the soul race so unrestrained? They don't care about the propriety between men and women at all. Or, is she trying to take advantage of me? Kid. Queen Rose said indifferently, I'm afraid you'll run away. Pa. With a wave of her hand, 2 crystal clear spirit stones landed on the counter and said, one of the best rooms. Okay. Okay. The innkeeper hurriedly nodded and bowed to arrange. Jun Changshao's spiritual sense spread out and came into contact with the spirit stones. He was secretly shocked. 5 times stronger than natural spirit stones. It was just a room, but she was so generous. Could it be that she was a rich woman? If it weren't for his dignity as a man, he might have leaned over and asked in a low voice, Big sister, do you still need a pendant on your leg? The very handsome kind. Creak. Creak. The door opened and closed. Seeing that there was only one bed in the luxurious room, Jun Changshao said helplessly, I'm really not used to sleeping on the same bed as others. Queen Rose waved her hand and summoned 2 chairs. She said, I'm not used to it either, so you can sleep here. Jun Changshao said, I'd better book another room. Come back. Queen Rose said coldly. That unquestionable commanding tone was quite strong, which made Goshing very unhappy. He wanted nothing more than to take out the unstoppable blade and fight her to the end. Forget it, forget it. Jun Changshao thought to himself, let's wait until the space-time worm wakes up. The reason he didn't dare to use the unstoppable blade was that he was in the Soul Race's continent, and the entrance to the Falling Star continent was blocked. Unless he destroyed the entire world, he would fall into a period of weakness for a few months after using the blade. He would definitely go to hell to sing. Late at night. It was as dark as ink. Jun Changshao sat in the corner of the room. He seemed to be meditating and resting, but in fact, he had been paying attention to Queen Rose, who was sleeping on the bed. He was planning to take advantage of this opportunity to deal with her with the vacuum cleaner. Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, the bedding on the bed flickered with a faint light. What's going on? Jun Changshao was stunned. Queen Rose, who was sleeping, had a slightly ferocious expression, and strange lines appeared on her neck. This woman seems to be in a lot of pain. Opportunity. A godsend opportunity. Swish. Jun Changshao rushed over, carrying the magically modified vacuum cleaner on his back. Then, he walked to the bed, lifted the bedding, raised the flat suction mouth, and pressed it against Queen Rose's back. Under the enhancement mode, a strong suction force burst out. Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The strange lines on Queen Rose's neck were sucked in uncontrollably. A faint smile appeared on Jun Changshao's face. Your soul has fallen into my hands. Wait for me to go to the Heaven Origin Soul Suppressing Tower to receive a good training. Swish. At this moment, Queen Rose, who was in pain, suddenly relaxed. She turned around and sent the flat suction mouth flying with her right hand. She pressed Jun Changshao's shoulder and pressed him against the wall. She said with a cold gaze, "What are you doing?" Chapter 1106. Jun Changshao, who was pinned against the wall, was dumbfounded. He had clearly sucked her soul into the vacuum cleaner, so why did she suddenly retaliate? Moreover, in the enhanced mode, a wave of his hand sent the flat vacuum cleaner flying. No. No. Jun Changshao calmed down and immediately merged into the vacuum cleaner. When he discovered the strange attribute that was bound, he broke down. Damn it, this is not a soul. No matter if it was number 1, number 2, or number 3, the souls that were sucked in were grassland green, and definitely not this black attribute that resembled poison. Wait a minute. Poison attribute? Jun Changshao instantly realized that the woman's painful state just now might be due to the poison outbreak. He thought that the opportunity had come, so he used the magically modified vacuum cleaner to help her, suck away the poison in her body, and help her resolve the crisis. Based on the current situation, that seems to be the case. The system said. If not for the fact that he was pinned against the wall and unable to move, Go Sheng might have squatted in the corner and slapped his own face. Jun Changshao, Jun Changshao. Not only did he not manage to deal with her, he even helped her detoxify the poison in her body. Was he stupid? Was he stupid? Jun Changshao was after all the patriarch of the sect of all times. Even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, his expression would not change. Are you poisoned? Did the poison just happen to act up? Rose Queen said coldly, did you see it just now? Nonsense. Jun Changshao said indifferently, we were in the same room. Wouldn't I be blind if I didn't see it? It had to be said that in front of such a domineering woman, Go Sheng's performance was very manly. Rose Queen said, and then? The poison in your body is very strong, and it will bring you great pain. I couldn't stand it, so I helped you detoxify the poison. Jun Changshao said calmly. Strictly speaking, he had indeed detoxified the poison, although that was not the purpose at the beginning. Rose Queen looked at him with a suspicious gaze. If I'm not wrong, the poison in your body will torture you for a long time. Now that you can bind me as if nothing has happened, do you still need to question it? Jun Changshao said. Rose Queen let go of his hand and sat on the bed. She pointed at the vacuum cleaner on his back and said, you used this thing to detoxify me? Normally, the poison would last for at least a few hours every time it flared up, but it would suddenly disappear from his body. He was the only one in the room, so it was easy to understand. Not bad. Jun Changshao said, this is the 10,000 poison purifier. It's specifically used to restrain poison. The system was truly impressed. Bragging simply came out of his mouth. Of course. Jun Changshao continued, this supreme treasure of mine is a little overbearing. When it purifies the poison, it will bring harm to the poisoned person, so, Rose Queen finished his sentence for him. After I recovered from the state of pain, I thought you were going to harm me, so I pressed you against the wall without any explanation. AI. Letting out a long sigh, Jun Changshao replied, if I knew that I would be misunderstood for helping someone resolve danger, I would have pretended that I didn't see anything. In his heart, he was thinking that not only was this woman strong, but her IQ was also quite high. How was he going to deal with her in the future? What is it? Rose Queen teased, do you still feel wronged? Jun Changshao sat on the chair and said, after being pressed by you, my injuries have worsened. The battle in 3 days will be postponed to 5 days later. He didn't really want to fight with the other party to determine the outcome, but he had to think of a way to stall for time and then find an opportunity to escape. Rose Queen walked over and stepped on the corner of the chair with one foot. She smiled and said, not to mention 5 days, I will wait for you for 50 days, even 50 years. Do you know why? Jun Changshao was stunned. Was she going to say some cheesy words of love? Why? Because. Rose Queen said, you are my servant. Jun Changshao wanted to cry but had no tears. Big sister, we have no grievances in the past and no enmity today. Why can't you let me go? Let me go. Rose Queen said, as long as you defeat me, you will immediately regain your freedom. Okay. Jun Changshao said with a serious gaze, in 5 days, we will decide the victor. The system joked, you're not investigating the Soul Continent. Investigate my ass. Jun Changshao roared hysterically in his heart, I must defeat her. I've had enough. At that time, even if I have to use my strongest trump card, it doesn't matter. Rose Queen smiled and said, I hope that after your injuries recover, you won't disappoint me. Woman. I won't disappoint you. Even if Irretrievable Blade can't deal with you, I still have contribution points, I still have a high-grade store. Even if I have to use up all my wealth, I will defeat you to redeem the dignity of a man. I like that. The system said happily. Although Jun Changshao was angry in his heart, he still said calmly, if I lose, I will become your servant. What if you lose? You have to pay something, right? I won't lose. What if you lose? There is no what if. Jun Changshao felt that he was confident enough, but he didn't expect a woman to be even more confident than him. Indeed, there was always a mountain higher than the mountain, and there was always someone stronger. How about this? Rose Queen added, if you lose, you will be my servant. If I lose, I will be your master. What's the fucking difference? Jun Changshao roared. Schwa. Rose Queen grabbed his collar and said, brat, do you know that the number of people who want to be my servant can fill up a city? You should feel lucky that I took the initiative to accept you as my servant. Because the two were very close, a rich rose fragrance drifted over. Don't talk nonsense. Jun Changshao was completely unmoved by the fragrance, and said, if I lose, I will be your servant. If you lose, you will be my maid. He. Rose Queen let go of his hand and covered her mouth as she laughed. This brat is really bold, he actually dares to have the idea of making me his maid. You don't dare to bet. Jun Changshao said. Rose Queen leaned over and whispered in his ear, Xiao Bai, I will give you 5 days to learn how to be a good servant. Jun Changshao almost vomited blood. Ever since he transmigrated, He had never been bullied so unscrupulously. Do you dare to bet? Fine. Rose Queen retracted her body and said, if you lose, you will be my servant. If I lose, I will be your maid. A gentleman's word. A man of his word. Fine. At this point, the bet between the two was officially established. System. Jun Changshao asked, how many contribution points are you still holding back? 100,000. The system said. Jun Changshao sneered in his heart, for this maid, I will take her even if I have to go bankrupt. Of course, it is a waste of her talent to be a maid. I can bring her back to Falling Star Continent and make her a hall master. Go Sheng took a fancy to Rose Queen. Of course, it was not her appearance or figure, but her strength. If he could subdue her, the sect of all times would have a powerful fighter. Here. Rose Queen threw a space ring and said, help me cure the poison, this is your reward. Jun Changshao did not catch it and let it fall to his feet. Damn it. Using reward to describe it, does she think of herself as a high and mighty queen, or does she really think of me as a servant? Rose Queen said, there are 10,000 spirit stones that I paid for at the counter just now. Swoosh. Jun Changshao quickly picked up the space ring and said with an angry expression, thank you. Chapter 1107. Jun Changshao lacked nothing but martial arts resources, so when he found out that there were 10,000 spirit stones in the ring, he picked it up angrily. Why was he angry? Because this was the dignity a man should have. Bah! The system said, shameless. Rose Queen said, take out the 10,000 poison purifier on your back. Being able to purify the poison in her body made her very interested. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, this treasure of mine can only be used once, and it takes a long time to use it again. It has no effect now. Then forget it. Rose Queen gave up on the idea of studying it. In her opinion, this guy was her servant, so the 10,000 poison purifier was equivalent to her own thing. Sleep. Jun Changshao sat cross-legged on the chair, thinking about the battle in a few days. Should he directly use hard to retract blade, or use 9 heavens and 10 earth sky tyrant spear first? This spear was a divine artifact refined by Emperor Zhenwei, and he gave it a Chinibyu name. She's interested in the vacuum cleaner. If I take out the spear and see that it's above divine grade, won't she fight for it? If it's snatched in the battle, it'll be very troublesome. Forget it, I'll just use hard to retract blade. As a first wish weapon, it had long been bound to Jun Changshao, so there was no need to worry about it being snatched away. The system said rather pessimistically, that was a perfect opportunity just now, but the host didn't manage to subdue her with the vacuum cleaner. This woman is very strong, so hard to retract blade might not be able to deal with her. Jun Changshao was silent. Indeed, in that painful and weak state just now, she could have sucked in the poison along with her soul. However, she quickly turned around and waved her hand to hit the flat suction mouth. What did this mean? It meant that the suction force in enhanced mode was completely useless against her. Hard to retract blade was Jun Changshao's strongest trump card. If this couldn't deal with the enemy, then it would be very tragic. The system said, so the host should stall for time. If it really doesn't work, wait for the space-time worm to wake up and leave the soul continent. When your cultivation level increases, you can come back and attack. You're not instigating me to spend contribution points. Jun Changshao was a little surprised. The system said, all expenditure of contribution points must be established reasonably. Since you know that spending them is useless, I naturally won't recommend it. Jun Changshao said bitterly, to be able to make you feel guilty, it also shows that this woman is very strong. Very strong. The system said, according to my calculations, even if the host uses hard to retract blade, the chances of winning will not exceed 30%. Jun Changshao rubbed his temples. When he arrived at the Spiritas continent, he thought that he would be able to turn the world upside down. But in the end, the first Spiritas expert he encountered was so troublesome. How could it not be troublesome? At the start of the game, they encountered the biggest boss in the dungeon. Forget it, forget it. After careful consideration, Jun Changshao inwardly said, I better think of a way to get rid of this woman. Since there was no absolute chance of winning, and the unsealing of Unstoppable Blade would cause him to fall into a long period of weakness, he intended to continue with the tactical retreat strategy. Revenge was a dish best served cold. Wait until I break through to the peak of Wuxia, then I'll come back to settle the score with her. Ding! Side quest activated. Jun Changxiao's eyelids twitched when he heard the notification. He thought to himself, I have an ominous premonition. He opened the mission panel. The content presented on it was please defeat Rose of Flowers, who wants to take him as a servant, within a month and redeem the dignity of a man. Time remaining, 29 days, Super Elite Quest, as expected. Jun Changxiao broke down and said, the quest is related to her. He had completed many side quests over the years. He could roughly guess when they would appear at the critical juncture. I'm planning to retreat tactically. The system gave me a quest. Isn't it obvious that it wants me to fight her to the end? To Jun Changxiao's relief. The quest time limit was 1 month, not 5 days as agreed in the previous bet. Super Elite Quest. Looking at the last note of the quest, Jun Changxiao was a little surprised. He had done so many elite quests, but he had never seen one with a super prefix. The system explained, obviously, this elite quest is as difficult as before, so the word super is added. The reward after completing it is also generous. Yes. Jun Changxiao made up his mind and said, for the dignity of a man, I must defeat her. Schwa. He opened the high-level store. He couldn't beat that woman because the cheat wasn't strong enough. Therefore, whether it was for the dignity of a man or to complete the side quest, he had to exchange for a higher-level cheat. It would be best if it was the kind that was invincible. Ding! Sect contribution points, 288,007,0000. Jun Changxiao fiercely scrolled down and spent 10,000 contribution points. The items in the high-level store were instantly replaced. Damn! After seeing the first item, Go Xing jumped up on the spot. He squatted from sitting cross-legged, and his eyes were filled with excitement. The first item in the high-level store was Secret Realm of Time and Space. This item was similar to the Secret Realm of Time and Space that he had previously obtained. Its level was intermediate and had a higher and longer time acceleration effect. When he was feeding the space-time worm, he was complaining that it would be good if there was a higher time acceleration. He didn't expect that it would appear in the high-level store. It was really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, and finding it without any effort. The system said, I've long advised the host to get the high-level ones. Jun Changxiao rolled his eyes and said, if I go with the mentality of getting the secret realm of time and space, I'll definitely fall into a quagmire and not be able to get out. Getting the store was like drawing a lottery. It all depended on luck. If he insisted on getting what he wanted, he might become a poor man. Jun Changxiao wasn't in a hurry to buy the intermediate secret realm of time and space. He continued to browse the other items, praying that there would be a talisman like the universal talisman that could instantly increase his combat power. The universal talisman could only be purchased twice, and Go Xing had used it all. Otherwise, with the help of Hard to Stop and the talisman that could increase his cultivation, he might be able to fight against Rose Queen. There were quite a lot of good items in the high-level store. All kinds of holy and divine-grade martial arts techniques, weapons, and elixir formulas could be seen everywhere. However, because it didn't directly increase his combat power, Jun Changxiao only glanced at it and didn't consider buying it for the time being. Suddenly, his eyes locked on an item called, One More Bottle. From the pattern, it looked like a drink bottle cap. I should be thanking you for your purchase. Although he was complaining, Jun Changshao was attracted by this strange item, so he clicked on the detailed introduction. Item, 1 more bottle. Introduction, Kong Shui Fu brand 1 more bottle reward cap effect. After using it, you can ignore the purchase restrictions of any item and obtain the right to purchase it once. Advantage, it's suitable for all kinds of weapons, elixirs, talismans, and other items that can't be purchased again due to purchase restrictions. Drawback, any restricted goods purchased will cause the user to experience a whole body weakness debuff for 1 year. If the goods themselves have side effects, the debuff will be doubled. Price, 10,000 contribution points. Note, this item won't appear in the purchased items column. If you still need it, you can continue to refresh it in the high-level store. Chapter 1108. After reading the introduction of the second bottle, Jun Changshao understood that it was to give him the right to buy a restricted item. The system suggested, the host can use it to buy the talisman of heaven and earth. That's what I was thinking. Although there were many good items newly refreshed, none of them could instantly increase one's combat power. Using it to buy the talisman of heaven and earth was undoubtedly the most suitable option. The system said, with the host's current level, with the help of the talisman of heaven and earth, you may be able to reach the peak of Wuxia or even higher. Jun Changxiao's eyes lit up. In terms of equipment, he was definitely not weaker than that woman, but his level was far from hers. If he could make up for it, he should be able to defeat her. But, the second bottle only gave him the right to buy, and he still had to buy the talisman of heaven and earth, which would cost him 20,000 contribution points. Moreover, Jun Changshao frowned and said, the talisman of heaven and earth will weaken me for a year after use, and the side effects will double if I have another bottle. Won't I be weak for 2 years? The system said, isn't there a middle-grade spacetime arcane realm? Maybe the side effects will be offset after a few days. That makes sense. Jun Changxiao's eyes lit up again. The system said, if the host completes this kind of super elite mission, the reward will definitely be higher. Okay. Under the strong promotion, Jun Changxiao immediately made a decision. He then looked at the abominable woman called Rose of Flowers lying on the bed and said coldly, give me 50,000 contribution points first. Ding! Sect contribution points, 788,007,0000. Ding! The host has spent 10,000 contribution points and obtained another bottle X1. It has been transferred to the space ring. Ding! The host has spent 10,000 contribution points and obtained spacetime arcane realm X1. It has been transferred to the space ring. Ding! The host has used another bottle and selected the talisman of heaven and earth, obtaining the right to buy it once. Ding! The host has spent 10,000 contribution points and obtained talisman of heaven and earth X1. It has been transferred to the space ring. Ding! Sect contribution points, 488,007,0000. Jun Changshao, who was squatting on the chair, gradually revealed a sinister smile when the talisman of heaven and earth appeared in the space ring. The shadow behind him turned into a big bad wolf. 1 month was too long, he had to seize every minute. The improved hard-to-retract saber could bring the user a powerful combat strength, but as the realm increased and the opponent became stronger, it was still unknown how long it could last. Therefore, Jun Changshao did not dare to rely on this item alone to fight Rose Queen. Once it was ineffective, even if he could fight her to a standstill, he would be at her mercy after the effect wore off. Now that he had the universal talisman, he was confident. After all, this kind of magical talisman could raise one's cultivation by at least 1 major realm after using it. When the Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace came to make trouble, Jun Changshao used it for the first time. He broke through from the 9th grade king of sword and martial arts to Wuxia in one fell swoop, directly crushing the former. In the finals of the Dragon and Tiger battle for hegemony, facing the upper realm's palm seal, he did not rely on his face to withstand it, but mainly on the universal talisman. Hard to retract saber could provide Jun Changshao with a powerful combat strength, turning any difficulty into a lawnmower game. The universal talisman could provide him with a higher level of cultivation in an instant. Both of them were trump cards. Unfortunately, the universal talisman was too buggy and could only be purchased twice. He thought that he would never use such a game-breaking item in his life, but in the end, it was realized by another bottle. Damn woman! Jun Changshao looked at the sleeping Rose Queen and gritted his teeth. I'll let you know what true strength is. 5 days later. In the area where yellow sand danced in the air, there was a murderous aura. This was the place where Jun Changshao and Rose Queen met for the first time. The two of them were hundreds of feet apart at this moment, their eyes flashing with coldness. Woman! Go Xing proudly cupped his hands and said, if you kneel and beg for mercy now, you can still avoid death. Is that so? Rose Queen laughed, her beautiful eyes filled with disdain. Jun Changshao didn't waste any more words with this woman. He directly crushed the universal talisman and broke through from sword and martial sages to Einherjar great perfection. No. He was a martial emperor. This power, Jun Changshao clenched his fists and felt a power that was powerful enough to destroy heaven and earth. His eyes flashed with excitement. He looked up and shouted, this is so fucking awesome. The system said, the host doesn't even need to use hard to retract saber. Swoosh! Jun Changshao raised his hand and pointed at the Rose Queen. He hooked his finger and taunted, woman, bring it on. Whoosh! Rose Queen rushed over. Although her speed was extremely fast, when she was about to get close, she felt a terrifying force pressing down on her. Oh no! Boom! Incomparably powerful energy instantly erupted in the battle area. The ground within dozens of miles collapsed by more than 100 feet. The rocks and plants further away couldn't withstand the wanton impact and instantly evaporated into nothingness. Jun Changshao withdrew his fist and spread his spiritual thoughts around. He couldn't help but exclaim, a martial grand emperor is so terrifying. 1,000 hands plucking flowers. At this moment, in the sunken and dust-covered area below, slender arms appeared one after another. Then, they merged together and turned into an even larger arm that swung over fiercely. Whoosh whoosh. The wind blew Jun Changshao's black hair away, but he stood still until the huge palm pressed down on him. He gently raised his index finger and forced it to stop. How is this possible? Rose Queen's beautiful eyes flashed with disbelief. Jun Changshao casually used his finger to block the palm formed by the 1,000 hands. Like a high and mighty king, he said, how can the light of a firefly compete with the brilliance of the moon? Boom! The emperor's aura erupted wildly, tearing the sky and shattering the earth. Puff! Rose Queen was so shocked that she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her eyes were full of shock. Whoosh whoosh! At this moment, in the clouds high up in the sky, a huge finger came down with a sky full of divine light. The terrifying pressure caused a large area of space to collapse. Rose Queen's face was full of despair. This kind of powerful force made her completely lose the courage to fight against it. Boom! Finally, the huge finger that seemed to come from outer space came into contact with the ground. In an instant, the power rolled up like thousands of waves and rushed in all directions. The mountains and rivers could not bear the burden and collapsed one after another, as if the end of the world had come. Puff! Rose Queen, who was pressed under the finger, spurted blood. From her pale face, it was obvious that she had been severely injured. Impossible! Impossible! Thud! Jun Changshao landed and stepped on her head with one foot. He crossed his arms and laughed wantonly. Ha ha ha! Ha 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 ha! What are you laughing at? Suddenly, a voice came to his ear, instantly pulling Goshen back to reality. Rose Queen stood in front of him. Seeing him grinning foolishly and drooling, she said angrily, "I can't stand such a shameless smile." Boom! That night, the Fulian collapsed. Chapter 1109. The next day. Jun Changshao left the city with a big bump on his head. Queen Rose still followed him closely. "I'm injured again. Let's fight again in 10 days. He tried his best to stall for time so that he could have more time to nurture the spacetime worm in the space ring. As for the spacetime secret realm, it would only be effective if he took it out, so there was no chance now. Okay. Queen Rose had no objections. Anyway, she had left the invasion of the falling star continent to her subordinates. She had time to play with this kid for the time being. Of course, she was very curious if he would give her a surprise after he recovered from his injuries. After leaving this small city, Jun Changshao went to the other nearby cities. After some observation, he learned that the overall strength of the soul race was not high in the harsh geographical environment. Sigh. I'm so unlucky. As soon as he arrived at the Soul continent, he encountered a powerhouse who was stronger than Wuxia. In order to defeat her, he had spent so many contribution points in one night. I'm talking about Miss Rose. Jun Changshao said, "Is there a bigger city nearby?" He could not accurately measure the overall strength of a plane just by looking at a small city. He needed to go to a bigger place. Queen Rose said, "I don't think I told you my name." "How did you know?" "Well," Jun Chang smiled and said, "You have the smell of roses on you, so I called you Rose." To be honest, in certain aspects, his brain worked really fast. I see. Queen Rose did not mind. She pointed to the east and said, 2,000 miles in this direction, there's a large city that can accommodate 5 million people. Is that so? Jun Changshao's interest was immediately piqued, and he immediately rushed over. The woman was right. When he arrived at the large city, he looked at the towering city walls and the scene of people coming and going at the city gate. He could not help but think to himself, there should be many powerhouses here. However, Queen Rose had unknowingly put on a white veil to cover her beautiful face. Jun Changshao didn't pry any further. He walked into the city and stood on the main street with an endless stream of people. He looked at the Soul Tribe experts who were either martial masters or wuzong. He exclaimed, there are quite a few experts here. In terms of scale, the city could not be compared to Jinyang City in Jinyang County. However, one could see spiritlings that were comparable to martial masters and wuzong. They were indeed quite impressive. Rose Queen, whose face was covered by a white veil, smiled. This city was one of the key military fortresses that she had focused on nurturing after she became the empress. Although the population was large at first, the overall strength was very low. After many years of development, there was finally a significant improvement. Jun Changshao began to wander around the city. Although he seemed to be casually wandering about, he was actually frantically trying to gather information on the enemy. He even memorized the habits of the Spiritas. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you be victorious in every battle. Have you seen enough? I've seen enough. Hurry up and heal your wounds. The two of them chose another inn and asked for another room. The next day. The sky had just brightened when the sound of quarreling came from the street outside. Jun Changshao, who was in meditation, came back to his senses and thought to himself, making a ruckus on the street early in the morning. They have no manners at all. Rose Queen had already woken up. She stood in front of the window with her hair disheveled. She held the side of her face with her jade-like hands and stared outside with her starry eyes as if she was watching a show. Jun Changshao walked over. On the street, dozens of fully armed soldiers surrounded two girls who were about 15 or 16 years old. Rose Queen glanced sideways and said, "What's in your mouth?" "A toothbrush." Jun Changshao looked outside while brushing his teeth and said, "This group of soldiers should be the city guards. Why are they surrounding two weak girls early in the morning?" Rose Queen said, "They're thieves." Gulp. Gulp. Jun Changshao raised his head and rinsed his mouth. Then, he spat water into the cup and said, "How can they be thieves without cultivation?" Bullshit. Rose Queen put her hands on the window and said, "The passers-by outside who were watching the show were discussing in private just now. These two girls were targeted by the city lord's son, so they were given a groundless accusation." "I see." Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "There's no shortage of mischievous playboys anywhere." While they were talking, a good-looking young man on the street walked over surrounded by servants and said with a smile, "Those who are targeted by this young master can't escape to the ends of the earth." The two girls curled up together and trembled violently in fear. "Men!" A general ordered, "Capture these two female thieves and bring them back to the city lord's mansion for interrogation. See if they have any accomplices." "Yes." Several soldiers strode forward. However, just as they were about to grab the two trembling girls, the fragrance of roses suddenly came. A graceful and elegant woman floated down from the sky. Jun Changshao was speechless. Does this woman want to meddle in other people's business? The playboy's eyes widened when he saw a beautiful woman suddenly descending from the sky. Oh my God! Was this a fairy from the 9 heavens? General He. The playboy pointed at Rose Queen and said quickly, "These must be the accomplices of the two female thieves. Capture her quickly and bring her back to my room. Bah, bring her back to the city lord's mansion for interrogation." Plop. At this moment, General He bent his knees and knelt down. The playboy was stunned. The soldiers were also scratching their heads in confusion. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "It's just a small fry. Is there a need to use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken and use pressure to control it?" Wait. There was no aura of pressure on the street. Strange. Jun Changshao was puzzled. Since there's no pressure, why did the general kneel down? Could it be that he was conquered by this woman's beauty? Bah. Useless. There was nothing to say about Rose Queen's appearance. Not only did the playboy fall head over heels for her, but the surrounding soul race cultivators were also shocked. However, after General He knelt down, his eyes were filled with shock. He put his forehead on the ground and said with a trembling voice, "Minister He, greets. Her Majesty." He said this sentence with difficulty. Especially when he heard the last 4 words, the air froze and the entire street became silent. Her Majesty. Plop. Plop. After a short pause, the soldiers standing in front of Rose Queen and dozens of soldiers standing behind General He all knelt on the ground and shouted in horror, "Greetings, Her Majesty." The sudden kneeling of the nearby soldiers directly highlighted the playboy. At this moment, his eyes were dull, and then he fell to the ground uncontrollably. Plop. Plop. In an instant, the cultivators and even the ordinary residents on the street knelt down in fear and trepidation. Rose Queen raised her hand and energy whistled out, binding General He. She said, "What crime did these two girls commit?" She was still her. But the majesty of an emperor who had been in power for a long time completely broke out at this moment. Her aura was so strong that it was simply outrageous. Emperor Zhenwei also had the aura of an emperor, but he was so weak in front of the 4th-generation empress who had been in power for thousands of years and led tens of thousands of soul race. The camera turned to the window of the inn. At this moment, the expression on Jun Changshao's face was also frozen. He came to his senses a little, sat on the chair next to him, lit a cigar and took a puff. He said bitterly, "It turns out that she is the boss of this plain Ling Ping Empress. Number 1 and number 2 souls. You two bastards dare to lie to me." Chapter 11:10. When Queen Rose appeared in front of the public without a white veil, her identity was naturally exposed. Jun Changshao was stunned. It turned out that this woman was the queen of the Soul clan. Something was wrong. Number 1 and Number 2 souls once said that Queen Ling Ping's aptitude was limited. She lived in the barren Soul clan all year round. Unless she took elixirs, it was impossible for her to have a high cultivation. Damn it! They must be tricking him. The system said, the 2 Soul clans have invaded the Falling Star continent for 10,000 years. It's normal for the information to be wrong. Jun Changshao naturally understood this, but when he thought of being bullied by that woman after entering the plane, he couldn't suppress his anger and said, I don't care. It's their fault. I want Arya to torture them more crazily. For the host's childish behavior, the system could only choose to be silent. On the street, General He, who was bound by Queen Rose's terrifying power, said with a pale face, no crime. As the commander of the city guards, it was easy to give a groundless charge. But facing the queen at this moment, he had no courage to lie. Of course. It was useless to say it, because, Queen Rose said lightly, they are not guilty. Are you guilty, or, she raised her hand and said coldly, death penalty. Boom. General He exploded on the spot. Because of the energy restraint, his flesh and blood didn't splash out. All the major cities in the Spiritas continent had their own city guards. This was something that Empress Rose had implemented after she succeeded the throne. The purpose was to maintain order and protect the city and its citizens. But now, General He was abusing his power and casually convicting innocent citizens. This greatly disappointed her. The general was obliterated, and the dozens of soldiers kneeling on the ground trembled. The playboy on the ground was so scared that he peed his pants. After all, he instigated General He to arrest the queen. Even if he had 10,000 lives, he wouldn't be able to survive. Whoosh! At this moment, a strong energy diffused. The playboy was bound, and then led by Queen Rose, flew to the city lord's mansion. Jun Changshao knew that this woman must have gone to trouble the city lord. After all, she had a powerful son. Wait! Wasn't this a good opportunity to slip away? Swish! Without another word, Jun Changshao flew out of the city as fast as he could. Then, he randomly chose a direction and disappeared through space. After Queen Rose dealt with the mayor and his son, she arranged for a new commander of the city guards. When she came to the inn where she had stayed before, she found that the guy had disappeared. Only a toothbrush and a toothcup were left in front of the window. She shook her head and smiled. He ran away. It wasn't just running. He had already run thousands of miles away. Damn it! After finding a place to settle down, Jun Changshao said angrily and unwillingly, when have I ever suffered such a huge loss? His life had always been smooth sailing on the Starfall continent. Yet, after coming to the Spiritas continent, he was bullied like an aggrieved wife. The system was very puzzled. I still can't figure out why the host wants to run. Nonsense. Jun Changshao said, that woman is the queen of the Soul Tribe continent. If she finds out that I'm a human from the Falling Star continent, the consequences will be dire. Host, don't you know why you are so handsome? Isn't being handsome meant to seduce the Empress? Don't hit people in the face, don't expose people's shortcomings. The system's sharp words were simply too fucking satisfying. I'm just bragging. Do you have to be so sarcastic? Jun Changshao said helplessly, besides, we've been together for so long. Don't you know that in order to develop the sect, I've already cut off all feelings between men and women? Bah! The system said, you want to cut it off, but unfortunately, you don't. Jun Changshao grabbed his neck and roared angrily, I'm already very annoyed. If you keep talking, do you believe that I won't immediately perish together with you? Come on, come on. Under the setting sun, Go Xing grabbed himself and swayed left and right. If a passerby saw this, they would definitely think that he was a big idiot. However, after messing around, the system said seriously, since that woman is the queen of the Soul tribe, if the host subdues her, isn't it equivalent to subduing the entire plane? Huh. Jun Changxiao's expression froze. When he saw the opportunity, he only cared about running away and did not consider that if he subdued the boss here, wouldn't he become the boss of bosses? Now that there's a side mission and the other party is the queen of the Soul tribe, as long as you defeat her, you can kill two birds with one stone, the system said. Jun Changxiao was silent. The system said again, a high and mighty queen usually has many experts protecting her and rarely walks around outside. If the host runs away this time, it will probably be harder to find her in the future. Why didn't you say so earlier? I just remembered. Jun Changxiao sat on a rock, his eyes filled with regret. The system was right. To be able to accidentally meet the queen of the Soul tribe, who was not accompanied by experts, was indeed the best opportunity to subdue her. Instead of fighting for it, he foolishly ran away. If he wanted to see her again in the future, he would probably have to go to the forbidden area of the palace. He, who had watched many TV dramas, naturally knew that the place where such a big boss of a plane lived would definitely be impregnable and filled with experts. If I go back now, will it be too late? Jun Changxiao asked. Unlikely. Jun Changxiao sighed and said, if I miss it, then so be it. When the space-time worm wakes up, I'll leave this place first and raise my cultivation level before coming back again. I bought the universal talisman for nothing. How could that be? It's not a bad idea to keep it as a trump card. Jun Changxiao really could not bear to use such a talisman that could raise one's cultivation level. If he could use his strength to defeat the queen of the Soul tribe in the future, it would definitely be for the best. Let's go. I'll find a hidden place and take out the space-time secret realm. Let's see if it can speed up and let the space-time worm wake up from its slumber. After making his choice, Jun Changxiao set off. However, he had only taken a few steps when he turned around with a stiff expression. He saw a graceful figure looming in the distant area where yellow sand was flying. Xiao Bai. Queen Rose walked over and said with a smile, we haven't fought yet. How can you run away? Jun Changxiao looked calm on the surface, but he roared in his heart, how did she find me? The system guessed, maybe when she came in contact with you, she secretly left a special mark on you. Jun Changxiao shook his head, then sat down and gave her a side profile. He said with a melancholy expression, I'm not running away. I just came out to see the scenery. Do you need to run 100,000 miles to see the scenery? Queen Rose laughed. Don't worry. Jun Changxiao said, a gentleman's word cannot be taken back. Since we have a bet, after all. His expression suddenly became serious, and he said, there will be a battle. I'm looking forward to it. Queen Rose raised her hand and used energy to bind Go Sheng. What is the meaning of this? I'm afraid you'll sneak out to see the scenery again. A warrior would rather die than be humiliated. Jun Changxiao's face turned red and he said angrily, fight. Fight now. Your injuries have healed. Yes. Are you sure you don't want to wait a few more days? Now, immediately, you and I fight. Whoosh. Queen Rose touched the rope of flowing light and said, few people have set foot in this area. It's suitable for battle. Chapter 11:11. He thought that he wouldn't have another chance if he missed it. He didn't expect that woman to chase after him like a dogskin plaster. Since that was the case, then don't blame June for being merciless. As for stalling for time, sorry, there was no need for that anymore. As long as he subdued this Soul Queen, not to mention any information related to the Soul Continent, controlling the entire world would not be a problem. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the desert, the wind howled. Jun Changxiao stood proudly, already wearing the Azure Yang set. Warning! Warning! This was not a drill, nor was it any fantasy. It was a real battle. Rose Queen smiled and said, "Your equipment is quite good. As the saying goes, clothes make the man." In addition, Jun Changshao was handsome to begin with. With equipment similar to the Heavenly Strategies school uniform, he was so handsome that it shocked the world and made ghosts cry. "Cut the crap." Jun Changshao said indifferently, "Show me your weapon." Rose Queen shook her head and said, "This queen has always liked to be bare-handed because it feels like punching the opponent's flesh." Clang! Jun Changshao drew his true yang sword and said, "Then let's fight." Whoosh, using his movement technique, he turned into a stream of light and rushed over. The first and second forms of the Ling Jian divine art were used together. First, he gathered the sword momentum in the sky, then slashed out densely packed sword energy. This was definitely the most serious battle Jun Changshao had ever fought since he broke through to Wuxia. Because if he didn't fight like this, he wouldn't be able to win. Rose Queen shook her head and said, "Your combat strength after recovery seems to be no different from before you were injured." Whoosh! 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 Bang! 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 Numerous jade-like hands appeared out of thin air, easily grabbing the incoming sword chi before crushing it into pieces. Ka Jun Changshao still rushed over. Mechanical wings condensed behind him, and his right fist was armed with steel. In a normal battle, using the true yang set and armed wings was already considered a trump card for him. However, it would be difficult for him to defeat Rose Queen, who was above Wuxia in the Great Perfection stage. Therefore, he had already grasped the talisman of heaven and earth in his hand. Jun Changshao didn't use it immediately. First, he used his current cultivation base to give the other party a false impression that his strength was only so. Then, when the other party wasn't paying attention, he unleashed a ferocious attack. Boom! His plan was pretty good, but as soon as he got close, he was sent flying by the opponent's punches. He then struggled to stabilize himself in the air. Rose Queen shook her head. "Is this your true strength?" Originally, he thought that after his injuries were healed, he would give him a big surprise, but in the end, he was greatly disappointed. Damn it! Jun Changshao once again felt that he was being looked down upon, so he angrily gripped his sword with both hands. His body of holy flames erupted, and all kinds of flames gathered on his sword, forming a rainbow light. Rose Queen was surprised. "So you're a fire elementalist." This could be considered a pleasant surprise. After all, there were very few martial artists in the Spiritus continent who cultivated both sword and fire. Swoosh! Whoosh! Jun Changshao once again displayed the linear sword technique. With the support of the fire element, the sword chi that burst out immediately carried scorching flames. Wherever it passed, scorching marks were left in the air. Rose Queen didn't dare to be careless. She used her graceful movement technique to shuttle between the sword and fire. If it were a man, the scene would definitely be unbearable. However, when performed by a peerless beauty, it was as if she was dancing under the special effects of reality and illusion. It was beautiful beyond compare. Swoosh! Swoosh! Jun Changshao didn't hold back and poured all the power of the sword and fire into the true yang sword. He crazily displayed the Ling Jian God technique, and endless sword chi swept out like a rainstorm. Swish! Rose Queen dodged left and right. Her right hand drew an arc in the air, and a powerful psionic energy burst out across the air. Boom! Jun Changshao placed his sword in front of him in time to withstand the powerful bombardment. He immediately flew back like a cannonball. Too weak. On the way, Rose Queen appeared out of thin air. Her right hand once again condensed power and formed a palm print from top to bottom, directly slapping him to the ground. This two-hit combo was too fast. If there was a martial artist present, he would definitely be dumbfounded. Jun Changxiao didn't know what level Rose Queen had reached, but he clearly understood that the gap between him and her was like a big realm. Damn it! Swish, he flew up, raised the True Yang sword high, and shouted angrily, "Scarlet Sky Raging Flame Slash!" Hoo hoo! Flames rose, and a large area seemed to have turned into a sea of fire in an instant. Then, it violently rolled and gathered together, forming a huge flame slash. Yi Xingqian used a weapon to perform self-slash back then, which gave him a lot of ideas. Therefore, when he was managing the sect, he often wondered if a spiritual force-type martial technique like the Scarlet Sky Raging Flame Slash could be combined with a weapon to unleash a stronger power. Later, he really figured it out. Hoo hoo! Hoo hoo hoo! Under the support of the scorching flames and the cold sword, the power was indeed stronger than before. If it was Lan Jingting, he would definitely be shocked. But at this moment, he was facing Rose Queen. Not only was she not scared, but she was also pleased. At least you have some ability. But, she gently raised her hand, and water droplets appeared in the air, and then gradually gathered in front of her, forming a weak water flow. She said, "No matter how hot the fire is, it will be extinguished when it meets water." Damn! This woman also knows water. Jun Changxiao couldn't care less about water restraining fire. He raised the True Yang sword and slashed out another Scarlet Sky Raging Flame Slash. Hoo hoo! Hoo hoo hoo! Two huge flaming sword lights pressed forward, and the power was so strong that the space was scorched black and collapsed. Swish! Rose Queen's right hand gently waved, and the water attribute gathered in front of her splashed out, and gradually condensed into the shape of two phoenixes. The flames were like dragons. The water was like phoenixes. Two forms, two powers, a battle of dragons and phoenixes. Ka 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 ka. The space couldn't bear the burden and could only collapse to express that it was very uncomfortable and wanted to cry. Boom! Boom! In the end, the two different forces collided violently in midair, forming an extremely hot atmosphere on one side and an extremely refreshing one on the other. Jun Changxiao's face was slightly ferocious. After the collision of moves, he could clearly feel that the opponent's water power had the upper hand. Although his fire power could still compete, it would be completely suppressed sooner or later. Swish! Jun Changxiao put his sword back into the spatial ring, and then took a horse stance in midair. He clapped his hands together, and his index and middle fingers protruded out. His black hair fluttered in the wind as he roared, "Seven mysterious sunglow, hoo hoo! Hoo hoo!" Two special red and orange energies instantly gathered in the sky, and instantly filled his body, and gradually compressed between his two fingers, forming a dazzling light. Rose Queen frowned. This light was a bit familiar. Break! With a shout with an echo, red and orange light beams suddenly burst out from Jun Changxiao's fingertips. The speed was so fast that it seemed to have pierced through the space in an instant, and rushed to Rose Queen in the blink of an eye. Boom boom! It was above the divine grade, and it came from the first and second volumes of the martial arts. The impact was very strong, and it directly sent Rose Queen flying thousands of feet away before she could stabilize her body. Swish! The defense enchantment in front of her that was dented by the bombardment gradually dissipated. She raised her head and said angrily with a pink face, "The remnant scroll that I kept close to me was stolen by you." Remnant scroll? Stolen? Jun Changxiao's face was full of question marks. Swish! At this moment, the space suddenly shook, and Rose Queen appeared in front of him. She said with her phoenix eyes wide open, "Looking at you acting like a dog, it turns out that you're a thief." Boom! In an instant, the ground within a radius of dozens of miles instantly caved in by several feet, and dust rose all over the sky, covering the sun. Chapter 11-12. When Queen Rose was conquering various planes, she had accidentally obtained a remnant manual that contained a supreme aura. Her martial arts aptitude was very strong, but after decades of research, she only managed to comprehend the martial arts technique and could condense the powerful orange beam. The main thing was that the manual had detailed records. Only by cultivating the first remnant could one cultivate the second remnant. In other words, without the first remnant, Queen Rose would not be able to cultivate it even if she had monstrous aptitude. This was not a big problem because what she cared about was not the martial arts technique, but the special energy contained in the manual itself. Very strong. Very strong. With a woman's super-perception, Queen Rose even guessed that if she could comprehend the energy contained in the manual, she would definitely have unimaginable gains. If Woody knew what she was thinking, he would be amazed that someone in the mortal world could detect the profound meaning hidden in the 7 profound sunglow break. Although Queen Rose could sense the secrets hidden in the remnant, she could not figure out the mystery, so she could only keep it close to her and study it when she had nothing to do. But, suddenly, the remnant disappeared one day. It was the kind of mysterious disappearance that came out of nowhere. Queen Rose's first reaction was that someone had stolen the manual when she was not paying attention. When she heard Jun Changshao shout, 7 profound sunglow, and the last word, break, she was sure that not only had it been stolen, but he had stolen it. How could the possessive 4th-generation Empress of the Spiritas continent tolerate someone stealing from her? Thus, she didn't care about anything else and directly appeared in front of Gosheng. Her actions were as fierce as a tiger's eruption. Her palm strike caused the ground dozens of miles to collapse instantly. The scene was simply too terrifying. However, when the dust gradually dissipated, Queen Rose frowned. Caw caw caw. Caw caw caw. The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Jun Changshao appeared in her field of vision with clenched fists. Although the ground around him had sunk by several feet, only the place where he was standing still remained intact and was not directly crushed by the domineering force. Queen Rose was surprised. So you're in the return to origin realm. Swish. Jun Changshao disappeared into thin air. When the camera followed, he had already appeared in front of Queen Rose. His iron fist gathered explosive power and punched out. Caw caw caw. Space was unable to withstand the pervasive energy and began to crack like a spider web. Boom! Jun Changxiao's expression was indifferent as he punched out. Although Rose Queen had arranged a defensive barrier in front of her in advance, it still shattered in an instant, and she was sent flying. Boom! When he landed on the ground, a wave of air spread out. It was as if an invisible hand was pressing down on the ground behind him, causing it to sink down by 10 zhang in an instant, forming a long and wide bowl-shaped pit. This guy, Rose Queen frowned. From the way he attacked just now, she roughly guessed that this person's cultivation was not below hers. It turned out that he wasn't lying. It turned out that after he recovered from his injuries, he was really very powerful. When did such a powerhouse appear in the Spiritas continent? Why didn't he hear his subordinates mention it? Experts who had reached the return to origin realm were definitely at the top of this plane. There was no way they were unknown. Shwa! Jun Changshao appeared behind Rose Queen without anyone noticing. He gently raised his hand, and a vast amount of energy gathered into a ball. He said coldly, "This is my strength." When he was suddenly bombarded just now, he directly crushed the universal talisman. Now that his cultivation had skyrocketed, he was no longer as cheap as before. It was as if he had been reborn. He was simply like a solemn strongest king. Me. Jun Changshao. In this alternate world, it wasn't a joke. Boom. The energy gathered in the palm of his hand suddenly exploded after expanding to the limit. The huge shock wave directly collapsed the space and shattered the ground. Plop. Rose Queen landed awkwardly, but the corner of her mouth raised into a smile. This guy didn't let her down. Schwa. Her lily-white hand waved in the void. Hum. Hum. The space trembled slightly, and a crescent-shaped weapon carved with a rose pattern appeared. Rose Queen sat on it lightly with her right leg over her left leg. She smiled like a big sister playing on a swing. I take back what I said just now. Jun Changxiao's cultivation had increased, and his strength was not below hers. She took it seriously and took out her exclusive weapon, Red Lotus Demonic Moon Blade. As a queen who had conquered various planes for thousands of years, she definitely had a lot of weapons and equipment. It was just that she rarely used them because the opponents she encountered were too weak. Rose Queen said, "This weapon of mine must see blood, so." Her voice lowered. You have to be prepared to die. Whoosh. As soon as she finished speaking, she flew away. Red Lotus Demonic Moon Blade followed closely under the command of its owner. The blade flashed red as if it was eager to drink blood. Whoosh. Rose Queen waved her finger, and as if there was an invisible string connected to the weapon, the opponent suddenly spun and shot away. TSK Jun Changxiao sneered. Schwa. Schwa. In the next second, the flying Red Lotus Demonic Moon Blade split into several halos and attacked from different directions. Because it was too fast, it was hard to tell which was real and which was fake. Ding! 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 Jun Changxiao stepped forward and waved the True Yang sword, slashing out sword energy and knocking the halos away. Suddenly, the space behind him shook. The real Red Lotus Demonic Moon Blade tore through space and swept over with a powerful force. Jun Changxiao noticed it immediately, but he did not have time to dodge. He could only instinctively turn around and raise his sword to meet it. Ding! Crack! Whoosh! The Red Lotus Demonic Moon Blade swept past the neck and returned to Rose Queen. Jun Changxiao stood in midair with a dull expression on his face. The True Yang sword in his hand had been broken in two, and the tip of the sword was stuck in the ground. It broke, it actually broke. Jun Changxiao, who had always taken pleasure in breaking weapons forged by Master Fan, had his weapon broken by someone else today, and it was even a high-quality True Yang sword made by the system. This was the first time in his life. Pain. A sharp pain came from his neck. Jun Changxiao subconsciously raised his hand to touch it. It felt wet, and when he retracted his hand, it was covered in blood. It turned out that the moment the Red Lotus Demonic Moon Blade flew over, it drew a thin and long wound on his neck. Rose Queen, who had taken Go Xing's weapon and neck, said indifferently, "If your weapon was a bit worse, your head would have flown out by now." Jun Changxiao casually threw away the broken True Yang sword, his eyes flashing with endless anger. Rose Queen said, "Your weapon and the equipment you are wearing should be a set. Now that one is missing, it should be useless, right? Obediently hand over the second remnant of the 7 profound Dawn Break Scroll and become this queen's servant. Perhaps you can live." How did this woman know that I have the second remnant of the 7 profound Dawn Break Scroll? Wait. Suddenly, Jun Changxiao remembered that after he bought the second remnant scroll, there was a strong rose fragrance on it. He hurriedly merged his soul into the spatial ring and sniffed the original scroll. Then, he compared it with the remaining fragrance in the air and exclaimed, "This is the smell." Chapter 11:13. The rose sent from Remnant Scroll 2 was exactly the same as the rose sent from the Rose Queen. This made Jun Changxiao very confused. Why would the things I bought from the mall have her scent? This. The system explained awkwardly, some of the items in the store may have been transferred from other dimensions after the host bought them. Jun Changxiao's expression froze. After a while, he said, "You mean, Remnant Scroll 2 actually belonged to this woman at the beginning, and I took it from her after I bought it from the store, so it's a second-hand item?" "That's right," the system said. It had known about this for a long time, but it did not expect that people from two different dimensions would meet each other. One must know that on the same continent, one might not even encounter someone who stole someone else's item in their lifetime, let alone in a distant dimension with a different system. I understand, I understand. Jun Changshao suddenly understood and thought to himself, no wonder she called me a thief. I'm innocent. It was obviously the system store that did it, and I was still unaware of it. Wait a minute. Jun Changshao hurriedly asked, 7 mysterious sunglow break belongs to that part of the goods, and remnant scroll 1 was also stolen from another dimension. The system said, it should be. Jun Changshao broke down and said, if the person who was stolen is very strong, won't I have to be careful when I go to other dimensions in the future to avoid being discovered? It shouldn't be so coincidental, the system said. If he Woody knew the truth, he would definitely roar loudly, it's just so coincidental. Of course. He did not know that remnant scroll was stolen by Jun Changshao. He had been imagining that the sect of all times was created by the 7 mysterious sage, and that the remnant scroll copy was left behind before he ascended, so he was willing to be a closed-door disciple. There's still remnant scroll 3. Jun Changshao broke down and said, it was also stolen. The system said, the host is fighting, please focus on proper matters. That's true. Jun Changshao withdrew his distracting thoughts and looked at the Rose Queen. He smiled coldly and said to himself, if I stole from someone else, I might feel a little ashamed. But since I stole from you, I feel very good. Gou Xing's favorable impression of this woman had dropped from 0 to -999 after his neck was almost sliced open by the Red Lotus demonic moon blade and his head was almost separated from his body. Seeing his disdainful smile, Rose Queen said coldly, you don't plan to hand over the scroll? I'm sorry. Jun Chang smiled and said, what I obtained belongs to me. There's no reason to hand it over. This was a tacit admission that she had stolen the second part of the 7 profound sunglow remnant scroll. This infuriated Rose Queen, and she immediately controlled the Red Lotus Devil Moon Blade to attack. Jun Changshao raised his hand and made a grabbing motion in the air. The 9 heavens 10 earth sky tyrant spear appeared out of thin air, instantly erupting with an unparalleled might that could only be possessed by a divine tier weapon. Comparing weapons? Sorry, Gou Xing is not weak either. A cold glint arrived first, followed by a spear like a dragon. Shwa! Shwa! Jun Changshao held the spear with both hands, and the spearhead spun at an extreme speed, carrying the power to disrupt space as it fiercely pierced out. Ding! 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 The densely packed crescent moons were all sent flying. Even their true bodies were sent flying by the tip of the spear when they emerged from the void. Xiao! Rose Queen waved her hand, and the Red Lotus Devil Moon Blade returned to her like a boomerang. Looking at the weapon that was emitting 7-colored light, she said in surprise, I didn't expect you to have an even stronger weapon. Shwa! Shwa! Jun Changshao performed a set of Yu Clan spear arts, and assumed a very Chinibu stance. He said proudly, what else can I do? Shwa! Rose Queen tore off her cloak, revealing her voluptuous figure. Then, she held the Red Lotus Devil Moon Blade in front of her and said, if you have a weapon that is not weaker than this queen's, then let's have a good fight. Does this mean that she was just warming up? Shwa! Shwa! Jun Changshao flew over, pouring his psionic energy into the spear, and began to stab around crazily. Streams of 7-colored light burst out. Because there was no special spear art, he could only use it directly. Needless to say. At his level of strength, even if there was no matching martial skill, he could still unleash a power that could shake the world. Bang! 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 Rose Queen rushed up. She did not use the Red Lotus Devil Moon Blade. The latter seemed to be connected to her mind and attacked in front of her, breaking all the incoming spear lights. Ding! 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 Boom! 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 In an instant, the two of them engaged in a fierce close-range battle in the sky. All kinds of energy whistled crazily, like a domineering hand ruthlessly breaking open the spatial barriers. Fortunately, this place was extremely remote and there were no cities. Otherwise, it would have been destroyed by the aftershock. As Jun Changshao and Rose Queen fought to a standstill, all kinds of power gradually spread out, alarming the Soul Clan warriors far away. What's that? It seems like they're fighting. The warriors thousands of miles away could not see the battle clearly, but they could see 7 colored streams of light flickering at the end of the sky. This is Her Majesty's aura. Could it be that a powerful enemy has invaded and is fighting fiercely? Let's go. Let's go. In the city where the Empress lived, the Soul Clan experts flew quickly in the direction of the aura. Jun Changshao had always despised the low strength of the warriors in this plane, but in a short period of time, at least dozens of Soul Clan experts comparable to Wu Xing rushed over. A half-saint with 3 digits, and Wu Huang with 4 digits. They set off from Empress City, and the aura they emitted inadvertently was already very terrifying. The Soul Clan warriors who acted together had all followed the Empress to fight all over the world. Not only were their cultivation levels high, but they were also very strong in combat. It could be said that this was definitely the most elite force in the Soul Clan continent. According to the game's plot, Jun Changshao entered the dungeon and started from these small ones. Finally, he fought all the way to Empress City to challenge the final boss. However, by coincidence, the first half was gone, and he directly faced the final boss at the beginning. Boom! Boom! High up in the sky, the battle entered its climax. With the support of the Universal Talisman, Jun Changshao temporarily had the strength of the Soul Clan continents return to Origin Realm, which was on par with Rose Queen. As for weapons, the two of them were also on par, so after hundreds of moves, there was no clear winner until the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Damn it! Jun Changshao was anxious. The Universal Talisman had a time limit. If he could not gain the upper hand and defeat her, once he entered a period of weakness, wouldn't he be finished? Other than the palm print from the upper realm, this was definitely the most difficult opponent Jun Changshao had encountered since he transmigrated. Regret. He should not have entered the Soul Clan continent so rashly. Swish. Swish. At this moment, streams of light flew over from the distant sky like a swarm of locusts. Boom! Boom! Jun Changshao fought with Rose Queen again. Seeing that the dozens of streams of light at the front were all at the level of Wu Sheng, he immediately sneered and said, "Are you afraid that you will lose, so you called your subordinates over?" Lose? No way. Rose Queen shouted coldly, "All of you, stop 10,000 feet away from me. No one is allowed to take a step in." This voice, which contained the unquestionable aura of an empress, instantly shocked dozens of Soul Clan experts and made them turn around. After careful consideration, they retreated 10,000 feet away and floated in the air obediently. Jun Changshao said, as expected of the Queen Ling Ping who ruled the Soul Clan continent. Her words are like an imperial edict that can't be disobeyed. Queen Ling Ping. Rose Queen said, she abdicated thousands of years ago. Ga. Jun Changshao was dumbfounded on the spot. This woman should not be Empress Ling Ping. Then, who was she? Chapter 4. P.S. After writing this chapter, I am also stunned. Because, the 13 chapters that I owe are finally completed. Great joy. Ha ha ha. After laughing, I was stunned again. Because many readers have rewarded me during this period, and there are a few more leaders in Qidian and Genesis. I still need to work harder. Chapter 11-14. Jun Changshao always thought that Rose Empress was Ling Ping Empress, but the latter had abdicated for thousands of years. This news was a bit fucked up. Or, number 1 and number 2 souls deliberately said that they were in a low realm in order to deceive him about a non-existent empress. Jun Changshao said, "Then you are." Rose Empress proudly looked up at him with her nostrils and said, "The 4th Empress of the Soul Clan, Rose Empress." Jun Changshao sneered and said lightly, "I don't care if you are Ling Ping, Rose, or Peony or Lily." While speaking, he took back the dominating sky spear and took out the hard knife. He threw it from left hand to right hand and from right hand to left hand, saying, "Those who offend June must pay the price. Wait. Where is my knife?" Swish. Rose Empress waved her sleeves valiantly and held the hard knife with her fingers. She smiled and said, "This thing is very delicate. Is it used to peel apples?" Jun Changxiao's mouth twitched. "I didn't even take care of my own weapon." "Don't worry, don't panic." Jun Changxiao held it with both hands and said calmly, "My weapon is very dangerous. You'd better hand it over quickly." As the first wish weapon given by the system, without the unsealed talisman, he would be backfired if he pulled it out forcibly, let alone an outsider. Pull out the knife. Maybe there was still one unsealed talisman left. Rose Empress played with the hard knife and smiled, "How dangerous is it?" This, Jun Changshao thought for a while and said seriously, "To be honest, this is my natal weapon, the purple-green knife. In this world, in this universe, only I can pull it out. Moreover, I once swore that whoever can pull out my violet-green treasured saber will be my master." The system said, "You have to apologize for tampering with the classic lines." Rose Empress was interested and said, "As long as I pull out the purple-green knife, you will become my servant and obey me forever." Jun Changxiao's expression was complicated. "Hurry up and pull it out. I can't wait to see you get seriously injured by the backlash." The Rose Empress held the blade between 2 fingers and said, "Watch carefully and see how this Empress pulls the blade out." "Wait." Jun Changxiao said with a pained expression, "Do you really have to do this? Since you've made an oath, I can only pull out this azulate saber." AI. Jun Changxiao seemed to have made up his mind. He raised his head and sighed, "If you can really pull it out, you will be my destined master. I will naturally listen to your orders. Pull it out. Quickly pull it out." "No, no, I have to hide further away." Clang! Just as Jun Changxiao turned around, he heard the sound of a scabbard behind him. He hurriedly turned around to look, and the expression on his face instantly collapsed. At this moment, Rose Queen was holding the pocket-sized scabbard between 2 fingers of her left hand, and the index finger and thumb of her right hand were holding the pocket-sized hard-to-sheath blade. She, actually pulled it out, and it was a clean one. Impossible. How could this be? Why was she able to pull out my unsheathed blade? Why didn't she suffer any backlash? A dream. It must be a dream. Slap. Jun Changxiao slapped himself. After feeling the pain, he was sure that this was not a dream, nor was it his imagination. The system was puzzled. Hard-to-sheath blade is the first wish weapon given by the system to the host. It is equivalent to signing a contract. Outsiders should not pull it out. Perhaps, it paused and said solemnly, "This saber is the same as the azulate sword. Whoever can pull it out will be the host's sweetheart." Jun Changxiao roared, "If this is my sweetheart, I might as well die." The queen who ruled the world must have an extreme personality. It was okay to admire beauty from afar, but if it was her sweetheart, the scene would definitely be. Go Sheng's mind instantly flashed with the scene of Arya training the soul race. He even brought himself into the role of number 1 and number 2. He hurriedly returned to reality and could not help but shudder. Rose Queen played with the wooden hard-to-sheath blade and said with a smile, "I pulled out the azulate sword. What do you say?" Jun Changxiao said indifferently, "You must have used some method. Otherwise, there is no way you can pull it out." Rose Queen said with a cold face, "You want to go back on your word?" "That's right. Go Sheng wanted to go back on his word. His unyielding dignity would definitely not allow him to be a servant. Swoosh! Rose Queen rushed over with the hard-to-sheath blade and said, I hate people who go back on their words. Today, either you kneel down and submit or die. Buzz! Suddenly, a weak light flickered. Rose Queen lowered her head and found that the hard-to-sheath blade in her hand was surging with an aura. It was a very bad aura. Not good. Boom! There was a sudden explosion in midair. The power instantly shattered the space within more than 10 miles. Jun Changshao happened to be in the range and was inevitably affected. He immediately retreated backward. When he stabilized himself 5 miles away, he asked with a face full of question marks, what's going on? Hard-to-sheath blade exploded, the system said. Exploded? Jun Changshao almost spat out a mouthful of blood and said, then it's gone. Although the shape of the weapon given by the first wish was a bit strange, it had always been with him all these years. Even when he encountered danger, it could always save him. If it suddenly disappeared, it would be difficult to accept. Hard-to-sheath blade, my hard-to-sheath blade, swoosh. Just as Jun Changshao's emotions were brewing, a stream of light flew out of the explosion area and then quickly fell into his hand. When the light dissipated, it was the hard-to-sheath blade that had been sheathed. It's fine. Ha ha ha. It's fine. The hard-to-sheath blade was fine, but Rose Queen was not. Because the explosion was too sudden, there was no time to dodge or throw it away. When the smoke dissipated in mid-air, she appeared in the field of vision with disheveled hair. Puff! Rose Queen spat out a mouthful of blood and looked very weak. The power generated by the explosion of the hard-to-sheath blade was not inferior to Jun Changshao's hundreds of punches. It was similar to a sudden sneak attack, so it was inevitable that she would be injured. Even if someone pulled out Jun Changshao's first wish weapon, it was like a time bomb that would explode unexpectedly. Sigh. The system sighed and said, after being with the host for so long, the hard-to-sheath blade has become shameless. Looking at the embarrassed woman who had been blown up, Jun Changshao happily shrugged and said, I said it was very dangerous. Do you believe me now? Rose Queen wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and said angrily, despicable. At this time, she had already understood that there was a secret hidden in the knife, and he had deliberately made her pull it out. Your Majesty. Swoosh. 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 Seeing that Rose Queen was injured and spat out blood, the experts of the 10,000 soul race immediately rushed to the battlefield, their eyes flashing with anger as if they wanted to burn Jun Changshao alive. Don't, clang! Just as Rose Queen was about to order her subordinates to stay away, the crisp sound of a sword being pulled out rang out. She hurriedly looked at Jun Changshao and saw that this guy was holding a big sword with strange words engraved on both sides and exuding a supreme majesty. Go Sheng, who had crushed the universal talisman, was like a mighty god of war, and the unsealed hard-to-sheath blade was like a supreme god. Ugly woman. Jun Changshao raised the hard-to-sheath blade with the words engraved on it, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes as he said, 10,000 years ago, you invaded the falling star continent, causing the world to collapse and the spirit Qi to wither. Today, I, Jun Changshao, will take all the old debts that I owe you. A terrifying binding force instantly spread out. Ga. Ga. The experts of the soul race who had rushed over first and whose strength was at Wu Xing's level froze in midair, their eyes filled with shock. Rose Queen was also shocked because the special power that spread out had a powerful binding force. Although she could resist it, if it continued to seep into her, she would be bound and unable to move sooner or later. Is this indigo blade a divine artifact from the upper realm? Chapter 11:15. After Queen Rose was injured by the explosion, the soul race experts swarmed forward. She was the ruler of the continent, and they could not afford any mishaps. As soon as they moved, Jun Changshao unhesitatingly removed difficult sheath because the universal talisman had a time limit. He could not waste any more time. Whoosh! 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 An extremely terrifying binding force spread across half of the sky. All the soul race experts at Wu Sheng's level were frozen in midair, and their eyes were filled with shock. At that moment, they strongly felt that not only were their bodies out of control, but their lives could also be easily taken away. Yes. As long as Jun Changshao swung his sword, they could only stretch out their necks and wait for their heads to be chopped off. Queen Rose's bright eyes were also filled with shock because the weapon in Jun Changxiao's hand emitted an aura that was even more powerful than the spear just now. There should not be such a powerful weapon in the mortal world. Then there was only one possibility: his purplish-green saber came from the upper realm. This was definitely not Queen Rose's imagination. In fact, Difficult Sheath's second form was, strictly speaking, out of the category of mortal weapons. Although Emperor Zhenwei's spear was made of divine stones from the upper realm and was very powerful, it was still a little lacking. Whoosh! Queen Rose did not think too much about Difficult Sheath. She immediately flew into the distance, wanting to leave this area before she was completely bound. You think you can run? Jun Changshao suddenly chased from behind and slashed at her with Difficult Sheath. Instantly, a sword ray that cut through space appeared. Slash! Queen Rose's movements were slowed down in the binding domain. Although she managed to condense a barrier in front of her in time, it was instantly broken, and the sharp sword ray brushed past her. Sizzle! A sword mark appeared, and blood splattered. Whoosh! Queen Rose's expression changed slightly. She sealed the wound on her right shoulder and continued to fly out of the binding domain. After Jun Changshao had crushed the universal talisman and released the unstoppable blade, the lofty empress had already lost her calm and collected demeanor. She had become battered and exhausted. As expected. Jun Changshao thought to himself, the second form of the hard-to-withdraw blade will have a hard time suppressing experts of a higher realm. The powerhouses of the soul race that were comparable to Wu Sheng were frozen in midair like statues after he glared at them. Only Queen Rose was still able to move. It was clear that she had reached the upper limit of control. Furthermore, Jun Changshao could clearly feel that under the activation of the talisman of heaven and earth, the power of the unstoppable blade had increased. If he used it normally, it would be difficult to cause trouble for the woman. The system said, so, the host needs to continue the modification. Jun Changshao didn't think about this problem for the time being. He turned into a streak of light and chased after them. Shwa! Shwa! His sword flashed and his movements were as ferocious as a tiger. Boom! 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 The exploding sword chi blasted onto the ground, creating sword scars that looked like rivers that cut through mountains and rivers. Plop! Queen Rose fell from the sky with wounds all over her body. Looking at Jun Changshao, who was proudly floating in the air, her eyes flashed with anger. After fighting outside for thousands of years, she had always laughed to the end as the victor. Now, she was beaten into a sorry state by a fellow who she regarded as a servant. This was really uncomfortable. It was especially hard to accept that he actually called her an ugly woman. Shouldn't she care that Jun Changshao came from the falling star continent? She actually cared about being called ugly. Sure enough, women loved beauty. It was her nature. Boom! At this moment, dust rolled up from the ground, and the ground caved in once again. After the dust dissipated, Jun Changshao held the hard-to-withdraw blade in one hand and the neck of Queen Rose in the deep pit with the other. His eyes were cold as he said, "You lost." Queen Rose's face was filled with pain as she said, "Damn it. This emperor should have killed you from the beginning when you were injured." "No." Jun Changshao said, "You don't have the chance." It was true that he was suppressed by Queen Rose in terms of strength, but if he really used all his trump cards, even if it was difficult to win, it would not be a problem for him to protect himself. You've already lost. Fulfill the bet and become my servant, Jun Changshao said coldly. As he spoke, the strength of his palm did not relax at all. Queen Rose's face gradually turned red, and her breathing became difficult. The system complained, the host really doesn't know how to be gentle with women. She almost killed me just now. Jun Changshao coldly said, pity the fairer sex my ass. Even if the enemy was a peerless beauty, Go Sheng would not be merciful. Moreover, to deal with such a woman, if he did not play ruthlessly, she might think that he was joking. Of course. Jun Changshao raised the hard-to-withdraw blade and pointed at the group of soul powerhouses who were bound in the air. You can refuse. As the price for breaking the bet, they will all die. His eyes and words were cold, and a strong killing intent filled the air. Queen Rose did not doubt that this guy would do as he said. I lost. She said with difficulty, I am willing to be your servant. She was injured, and her subordinates were controlled. The situation was extremely unfavorable for Queen Rose. Compromise was the best choice. Hand over your soul origin, Jun Changshao said indifferently. Without absolute control, he would definitely not believe it so easily. This was because Zhang Wuji's mother had said that the more beautiful a woman was, the more likely she was to lie. However, it was strange. I've already captured this woman and have no strength to resist. Why hasn't the side quest been completed yet? For this reason, Jun Changshao deliberately opened the mission panel. After confirming that it was defeated and not killed, it was even more puzzling. You. How can I hand over my soul origin? Queen Rose was choked to the point that she could not breathe. Jun Changshao let go. It had to be said that this guy was really heavy-handed. Queen Rose's white and tender neck was pinched until there was a 5-fingered handprint. Huff. Huff, after panting for a while, her eyes suddenly turned dark red, and she said, I can be your servant, but it seems that the victor between us hasn't been decided yet. Not good. Jun Changxiao's expression changed. Swish, light flickered in front of his eyes, and when Go Sheng came back to his senses, he was already in the illusory secret realm. Huff huff. In the sky, violent energy whistled. Jun Changxiao raised his head and found that Queen Rose was suspended in midair. Her body was surrounded by a majestic green attribute, completely enveloping her. Her weak face gradually recovered its rosy color, and the sword wounds on her body quickly healed. Even more miraculous was that the attributes that enveloped his body gradually condensed into a solid dark green armor. Shwa! Queen Rose, who seemed to have transformed, raised her hand, and dozens of strange patterns appeared in the air in front of her. Balls of green energy shot out like cannonballs. Bang! 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 Jun Changxiao broke it with his sword, but his brows were also wrinkled. This woman's combat strength was obviously stronger than before. Since this emperor ascended the throne, I have never used my absolute domain. You are the first. Queen Rose, who was wearing a green armor, regained her usual arrogance that made people look up to her. Absolute domain. Jun Changxiao held his sword with both hands and said, I'm so nervous. Shwa! The unstoppable blade suddenly slashed forward. The sword light that originally cut through everything only brought about ripples after crossing the void, but it couldn't hurt the space barrier at all. Queen Rose raised her hand, and the dark green attribute gathered into a big hand. It easily caught the sword light and said, in the absolute domain, this emperor is the heaven, and you are just an ant. Bang! The sword light collapsed. Heaven! Jun Changxiao rushed up with his sword, and the cold sword light slashed out one after another, and shouted, it is used to resist. It is used to push. Chapter 11:16. Boom! Boom! In the half-real secret realm, Jun Changshao waved his hard-to-retract saber with both hands and started a fierce battle with Rose Queen. God. Then let's go against it. Boom. 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 Sword light burst out wantonly, and sword energy filled the space, but this absolute domain was very strong. No matter how hard Jun Changshao hit it, it still showed no signs of cracking. Rose Queen was even more valiant. She didn't use any weapons and only relied on her fully armed armor to fight against him. Even when she was cut, there wasn't a scratch left on her body. Jun Changshao didn't think that her equipment level was very high and could resist his hard-to-retract saber. The reason was still related to the so-called absolute domain. The system said, this should be a space similar to the illusion of a formation. Inside it, she can obtain an endless stream of energy, thus increasing her combat power and defense. How do I crack it? If you ask me, who should I ask? Therefore, Jun Changshao hated this system very much. He liked the female system given to him by the portal of the plain battlefield. After all, it always provided him with corresponding help at critical moments. Boom! Boom! The two exchanged dozens of blows in the absolute domain. Outside. That was the area where Jun Changshao was just now. The binding force disappeared with his disappearance, and the Soul Clan experts were freed. As long as the hard-to-retract saber was unsealed, it would definitely cause a massacre. They were very lucky to survive. Where's Her Majesty? Look! An expert pointed to the area where Jun Changshao and Rose Queen disappeared. There was a fist-sized green energy ball shining there. Absolute domain. Her Majesty's strongest killing move. The last time she used it was when she fought Ling Ping Queen before she ascended the throne. These Soul Clan experts had followed Rose Queen for thousands of years, but they were lucky enough to see her use her killing move once, and it was to fight for the position of Empress. Damn it! That guy is a warrior of the Falling Star continent. How did he come here? Everyone began to think about Jun Changshao. After all, they just heard that this guy represented the Falling Star continent to settle scores. In the absolute domain, that guy is dead for sure. However, if the Empress pursues this matter, I'm afraid we'll all be implicated. Instead of entering the Falling Star continent, they had allowed the people from the Falling Star continent to enter their territory. This was no small matter. Boom! Boom! Inside the absolute domain, Jun Changshao fought Queen Rose for another 10 rounds. He fell to the ground with sweat all over his forehead. He thought to himself, the spiritual energy inside my spiritual core is being consumed faster than outside. Furthermore, even if he stood still, his spiritual energy would still be consumed. The system said, if the host continues to fight, before the talisman of heaven and earth's effect ends, the host's spiritual energy will be completely exhausted. Jun Changshao was silent. Floating in midair, Rose Queen looked at him with her nostrils and said, "Did you notice that your energy consumption is fast?" Of course. They didn't disappear at will. Instead, they fused into my body. Jun Changshao's expression turned ugly. No wonder the more he fought, the more tired he was, while the more energetic she was. It turned out that she had stolen his spiritual energy. This absolute domain was too strange. Xiao Bai. Rose Queen said, "Your strength has exceeded this emperor's expectations." "My name is Jun Changshao." Jun Changshao brandished his sword and said angrily, "Don't call me Xiao Bai." Boom! Boom! The two of them engaged in a fierce battle in midair again. From the looks of it, although Rose Queen's defense was strong, she was still unable to do anything to Jun Changshao, who had a blade that was hard to retract. She was not in a hurry at all, because this kind of trump card was mainly used to consume energy. As long as she continued to defend, sooner or later, she would exhaust her opponent. Rose Queen was not in a hurry, but Jun Changshao was. Originally, the talisman of heaven and earth had a certain time limit. Now that he was in the absolute domain and his spiritual energy consumption was accelerated, if he could not deal with the other party, he would really be reduced to a servant. Boom! Boom! Jun Changshao launched a crazy bombardment. The second form of hard to retract could be said to be full of firepower. The explosive sword energy formed by the second form of hard to retract was scattered everywhere. However, when it hit the space barrier, it only left a shallow mark and could not break it. The more it was so, the more Rose Queen chose to avoid the battle. To be honest, after being abused just now, although her injuries seemed to have healed, her combat power was still greatly weakened. So, it was not wise to choose to fight with force. Huff. 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 A few minutes later, Jun Changshao stood on the ground, panting, with beads of sweat oozing out of his forehead. Rose Queen was surprised. "You are quite strong." If he had been in Yang Kai's place, he would have long since collapsed to the ground in exhaustion. Jun Changshao could be so strong, not because of the treasure of kidney, but because of the two spiritual cores in his body. However, after a short 10 minutes of outburst, more than half of them had been consumed. Damn it! He raised his head angrily and said, "I should have killed you just now." "No." Rose Queen said, "You don't have the chance." In this kind of serious situation, the system really wanted to laugh out loud because this woman was saying the same thing the host said just now. The same tone and intonation, but the two people were swapped. It was too funny. "Give up." Rose Queen said, "Be my servant and I will treat you well." Although she already knew that this guy came from the Falling Star continent, she still hoped to subdue him. After all, as long as she trained him well, he would be able to follow her everywhere. Smack! Jun Changshao covered his face with his hands and tilted his head backwards, laughing out loud. "What are you laughing at?" Rose Queen frowned and said. Jun Changshao threw hard to withdraw a blade on the ground and laughed sinisterly. "I am laughing at your arrogance." Rose Queen said indifferently, "Do you still have a trump card that can break my absolute domain?" "Correct." Jun Changshao suddenly raised his hand, and the stone statue he obtained from the interdimensional battlefield appeared out of thin air and then floated in front of him. Swoosh! He put his hands together in front of his palms. Huff huff huff, violent energy crazily surged from the stone statue. Jun Changshao, whose soft black hair was fluttering in the wind, looked up and stared at Rose Queen with a cold gaze. "Ugly woman, meet the devil of hell. Don't mess around." The system roared, "This thing will cause the host to lose, transform." Jun Changshao shouted loudly. Huff huff huff, the stone statue flickered red and turned into thousands of rays of light. Red lines like some kind of ancient restriction appeared on Jun Changshao's skin, and then he turned into a gargoyle. Buzz buzz buzz. The violent and terrifying aura around him became stronger and stronger, shaking the absolute domain violently. Rose Queen's gaze became serious. Not good. Suddenly, her pupils shrank. Boom! In an instant, a huge hand that seemed to be condensed from stone reached over and directly blasted Rose Queen away. She crashed into the barrier, causing the barrier to tremble even more violently. Thud! Thud! Jun Changshao, who had turned into a stone statue, rushed over, then jumped up, raised his right fist, and smashed down on the other party. Boom! Rose Queen did not have time to dodge. She used her battle armor to withstand the heavy blow, and her entire body caved in the spatial barrier. Outside. The soul martial artists discovered that a small area of the suspended energy cluster suddenly protruded. Boom! 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 In the absolute domain, Jun Changshao, who was augmented by the power of the stone statue, launched a new round of bombardment. With every attack, the spatial barrier would cave in, and the sphere that appeared in the soul martial artist's vision would protrude. It was very similar to the scene of Master Xing detoxifying the poison in the lampshade in Kung Fu. Not good. It's going to explode. Retreat. 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 Boom! The soul martial artists had just moved when the absolute domain exploded, and the impact instantly swept them away. They fell to the ground and vomited blood. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the blast caused by the explosion, the petrified Jun Changshao walked out of the air. His right hand was holding Rose Queen, whose green armor was cracked in many places and whose face was extremely weak. Plop! He threw her to the ground, and the unstoppable saber flew over. Swoosh! Jun Changshao placed his sword on her neck and said gloomily, "Is the battle over?" Rose Queen, who had been ruthlessly beaten up in the absolute domain, was exhausted. The dark green armor on her body gradually dissipated, and sword marks appeared on her body again. She had lost. She had really lost this time. Your Majesty. The soul experts stood up and rushed over, ignoring their injuries. Swoosh! Jun Changshao raised his petrified hand and restrained an expert comparable to Wu Sheng with an invisible force. Then, with a bang, he crushed him into a bloody mist on the spot. This scene shocked the other soul race martial artists so much that they paled. Don't come over. Rose Queen gathered her last bit of strength and shouted out 3 complete words. However, at this moment, it was not a matter of whether they could come over or not, but whether Jun Changshao would let them go. Swoosh! He raised his hand again and restrained 2 soul experts with an invisible force. With 2 bangs, they turned into a bloody rain. This kind of killing experts comparable to Wu Sheng with a raise of his hand was simply too terrifying. Jun Changshao. Rose Queen said with a pale face, "Don't hurt them. I am willing to be your maid." Swoosh! Jun Changshao grabbed her with one hand and tilted his head with a sinister smile. "Stupid woman, do you still have the right to make conditions in front of me?" His eyes became redder and redder, and his body became more and more petrified. Even his voice became low and hoarse. It felt like a demon from the depths of hell was gradually awakening. It's over, it's over. The system collapsed. This guy has lost his mind. To be precise, he had not lost his mind yet. However, killing the soul experts without hesitation meant that Jun Changshao's soul had been controlled by the power of the stone statue, and he had become cold-blooded and ruthless. In more technical terms, he was going to turn evil. Chapter 11:17. In the dimensional battlefield, Jun Changshao had used the stone statue's power once. Although he defeated the sky battlefield's ghost, he also beat up the Purple King. This thing was poisonous. It could easily erode one's mind and cause one to do irrational things. Therefore, Jun Changshao repeatedly emphasized that he should not use it unless he had no other choice. Trapped in the absolute domain, the consumption of spirit energy accelerated, and the restriction of the cosmic talisman, Jun Changshao could only use it as a last resort. Become a servant? Impossible. Even if I, Jun Changshao, have to step on this woman under my feet. Moreover, this was a dimension that had invaded the falling star continent. Enemies were everywhere. So what if he turned it upside down? The treasure from the dimensional battlefield was really awesome. With the stone statue's power, Jun Changshao not only beat up Rose Queen, but he also broke the absolute domain that she was so proud of. It was broken. Especially when he easily killed a soul expert comparable to Wu Sheng. Rose Queen's mind was blown. The soul continent itself had little spirit energy. It had to invade other dimensions to cultivate experts with difficulty. Even one death was a huge loss. However, before Jun Changshao used the stone statue's power, it would not be a big problem if she admitted defeat. But now, she had no right to negotiate because the other party had turned evil. Whoosh whoosh. A violent and gloomy aura whizzed out, making the space that was healing even more solemn. Jun Changshao grabbed Rose Queen. The strange patterns on his body and his red eyes made him look like a gargoyle that walked out of hell. Wake up! Wake up! The system kept shouting in its heart, hoping that the host would stay true to his heart and not be controlled by the gloomy aura and become an emotionless dark demon king. Needless to say, the effect was there. Jun Changshao was fighting against the power that emerged deep in his heart. His red eyes would occasionally become clear for a short while. Because of this unyielding resistance, his face gradually became ferocious. Swoosh! His mind slowly went out of control. He lifted Rose Queen, and violent spirit energy surged out and completely enveloped her. He began to squeeze her. It's over, it's over. The system broke down and said, the host's head is filled with thoughts of killing. Ka ka ka. The pressure continued to erode, and Rose Queen's armor began to crack. Fortunately, she was wearing clothes underneath, so there was no risk of her being exposed. Boom! 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 At this time, dozens of Spiritas powerhouses had already rushed over. They gathered all sorts of martial skills and blasted Jun Changshao's back, but none of them were able to shake him in the slightest. Annoying fly! Die! Hoo! Jun Changshao raised his hand and gathered his psionic energy, sending dozens of soul race experts flying. They fell to the ground and blood splattered everywhere. Ka ka ka. The strength in his hand was still increasing, and Queen Rose's armor was completely shattered. Her body sank into the spiritual energy, and she felt excruciating pain all over her body, as if she was about to be crushed into pieces. Shwa! At this moment, Jun Changshao suddenly let go of his hand and could not help but take a few steps back. He hugged his head and screamed in pain. His eyes also rapidly switched between red and clear. There's still hope. The system said happily. The host's unyielding will was still fighting with the power that controlled the soul in his body, and he was still fighting for the control of his body. Wah! Rose Queen fell to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. At this time, she was exhausted and seriously injured. She could only lie weakly on the ground and watch that guy screaming in pain. Ah ah! Ah ah ah! The power that controlled the soul was still surging wildly, and the pain it brought made Jun Changshao's face extremely hideous. Boom! Boom! In order to vent the pain, he clenched his fists and bombarded the void frequently as if he had lost his mind. The poor space could not withstand the damage, and a large area suddenly collapsed. Shwa! Shwa! While Jun Changshao was fighting with the power of the stone statue, the soul race experts endured the pain and desperately flew to Rose Queen's side and brought her to a relatively safe area. Retreat, Rose Queen said weakly. The spirit-kin experts didn't dare to provoke the crazed Jun Changshao, and they were just about to take the Empress away. However, they saw the Empress collapse to the ground with a thump after the attack, and she didn't stand up again. Queen! One of the experts said, that guy is down. Not only did Jun Changshao fall, but the power of the stone statue that corroded his soul also receded like the tide, and his petrified body was gradually returning to its original state. The system said, he forced the power that controlled the soul to retreat. The host's willpower is really strong. But, it said pessimistically, if this tribulation is over, how will the other danger be passed? Jun Changshao, who had not completely turned black, was now in a severe coma. Although Rose Queen was injured, her subordinates were still there, and it seemed that she did not intend to retreat. Damn it! Can't you hold on a little longer? Queen, that kid seems to have fainted. The soul race experts, who had planned to take Rose Queen away, saw Jun Changshao lying on the ground motionless, and their faces immediately lit up with joy. This martial artist from the Falling Star continent dared to come to their territory, severely injure Rose Queen, and kill his companions. Now that he was unconscious, wasn't it the same as being at the mercy of others? Not good. Rose Queen has fainted too. Rose Queen's injuries were not light either. After being rescued by her subordinates from Jun Changxiao's berserk area, she could not hold on and fainted. What should we do? What else can we do? We must kill this guy to prevent future trouble. Let's go together. The soul race experts were worried that Jun Changxiao was faking it, so they did not dare to go alone. Instead, they went together and kept a distance for the time being. It's over. The system broke down. He's going to die. Although Jun Changxiao had resisted the stone statue's power, after falling into a coma, his various functions were severely reduced. Not to mention a group of experts comparable to Wu Sheng, even an ordinary person would be finished with a brick. This guy has indeed fainted. Moreover, from the frequency of his breathing, his injuries should not be light. Everyone, let's go together. Chop him into meat paste. Swish. 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 The soul race experts swarmed forward, and powerful energy erupted. Don't look at how they were injured just now, and the martial skills they used were greatly weakened. However, killing a person who was severely unconscious was still a piece of cake. Huff. 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 Dozens of energy pressed down from all directions. Jun Changxiao, who had been unconscious and defenseless, could be said to be in imminent danger. At this time, who could save him? No one. Because he came to the soul race continent alone, without any disciples or companions, from the perspective of 10,000 years ago, any soul race on this plane could be counted as his enemy. Sigh. At this time, the system sighed and said, the situation does not allow me to hide anymore. Huff. Huff. At the moment when all kinds of energy pressed down, Jun Changxiao's body surged with majestic airwaves and instantly shrouded him. Huff. As the explosive background music played, a large hand gently swept across the camera. A white cloak with the word "Department" engraved on it appeared in front of Jun Changxiao, and a seemingly real yet illusory body appeared in front of him. Due to the angle and the lingering clouds, it was difficult to see the true appearance of Mount Lu. Swish hard to retract saber, which was inserted into the ground in the distance, suddenly flew over and was caught by the mysterious person. He lightly waved his sword and broke all kinds of energy attacks. That guy has a helper. Retreat. 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 Swish. 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 Seeing that all kinds of moves were easily broken, the soul race experts did not think too much and hurriedly fled with the unconscious Rose Queen. The mysterious person did not chase after them. Holding hard to retract saber, he stood in place, his back view shrouding the unconscious Jun Changxiao with a sense of security. Ding! System assistance has violated the rules and will be punished. Ding! System entering shutdown state. Countdown 10. 9. 8. 7. Host. I'm a little tired. I can't accompany you for the time being. The mysterious person turned his head and looked at Jun Changxiao, who had grown from a weak assistant to a strong one. A faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and then gradually faded. 1. Ding. System assistance shutdown. Ding. All functions of the strongest Sect system are suspended. Main and side missions are operating as usual. Jun Changxiao could not hear everything that was happening in front of him and the unfamiliar system notification that rang in his ears. This was because not only was he unconscious at this moment, but the duration of the cosmic talisman and the enhancement effect of hard to retract saber had also ended. Chapter 11:18. The battle between Jun Changxiao and Rose Queen was over. The space that had collapsed because of the power was crying silently and licking the wound slowly. Who won this battle? Without a doubt, it was Jun Changshao. But the price was very high. Not only did he consume a universal talisman, but he also activated the power of the stone statue when he opened the seal. This incident also proved that Jun Changshao, who could practically do whatever he wanted on the Starfall continent, was still a far cry from the top experts of other realms. As for using the worm of time and space to travel to other planes, the result might be running away. After all, the Soul Clan was not a fighting clan. In the vast universe, there were stronger clans. With Jun Changshao's current cultivation, he would be crushed if he started to travel to other planes. Of course. He didn't expect that he would meet a big boss at the beginning of the game when he sneaked in, and it was not Ling Ping Queen. Otherwise, he would definitely develop in the Falling Star continent for a while before coming here. Since it had already happened, it was useless to complain. Drip, drip. The sky that was gradually recovering was covered with dark clouds. Drops of rain splashed on Jun Changshao's face, waking him up from a coma for a day and a night. Pain. Explosion. Rising from his body and head. What's going on? Jun Changshao had no strength and could only lie on the ground and ask in his heart. The system, which liked to ridicule him, should have answered at this time, but there was no response. Playing dead. Jun Changshao didn't take it seriously. He closed his eyes and tried to recall everything. He remembered the scene where he used the stone statue to torture Rose Queen, and then, he couldn't remember anything. I should have won, but, what happened after that? The pain in his head made him give up thinking. It was not until he was drenched in the rain for a few hours that he stood up with difficulty. Because of the double debuff, he only had the strength to walk without any cultivation. I'm very weak now. I need to find a place to recuperate as soon as possible. Jun Changshao stood firm and then put the sword and the stone statue into the space ring. He dragged his weak body and walked in a direction casually. During this time, he called the system, but there was no response. So he cursed in his heart, "Are you playing dead?" A few hundred miles away, there was a mountain range that had collapsed due to the shockwaves. Jun Changshao arrived with great difficulty and found a passable cave. Who? As soon as he sat down, his entire body felt like it was falling apart. The side effects of using the universal talisman and the unstoppable blade at the same time were much better than before. Right. Have you completed the side quest? With a thought, Jun Changshao pulled out the system panel. But, the various data that appeared in his field of vision were all jumbled up. Only the main quest and side quest were still there. What's the situation? Jun Changshao, who was from Earth and had come into contact with a lot of advanced technology, was stunned for a moment before he blurted out, "Poisoned? Dead? Malfunctioning? System. Say something. Don't tell me you're dead." No matter how much Go Sheng shouted in his heart, the voice that had been bickering with him for years never sounded. "It's over." Jun Changshao said with a face full of despair, "The system must have malfunctioned. It can't operate normally for the time being." Temporarily shutting down and not operating meant the same thing. He guessed correctly. The system must have a self-detection and repair function. What I need to do now is to recover my cultivation as soon as possible. In the past, without the help of the system, Jun Changshao might have panicked a little. But now, he was the Sword Saint and Martial Saint, so he didn't feel helpless or helpless. Instead, he calmed down quickly. Swish. Using his weak will, he fused it into the spatial ring and locked it on the vortex-shaped spacetime secret realm. Whether I can get out of this predicament or not, it's up to you now. After resting for a while and gathering some strength in his body, Jun Changshao dragged himself to his feet. He took out array flags from the spatial ring and inserted them in front of the cave. Whine. An isolation array appeared out of nowhere and sealed off the entire cave. Fortunately, setting up an array doesn't require spiritual energy, Jun Changshao wiped the sweat from his forehead and fused his will into the spatial ring again to bring out the spacetime secret realm. Huff! The entrance of the vortex was formed out of thin air. Jun Changshao walked in and was surprised to find that there was an extremely strong heaven and earth attribute in the spacetime secret realm. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Middle grade is better than low grade." Of course. What he really cared about was the time acceleration, so he quickly tested it with the time in the outside world. In the end, he got the answer that it was 100 times faster. The low grade is 50 times faster and the mid grade is only 100 times faster. The improvement isn't too obvious, Jun Changshao shook his head and said. Swish! He suddenly turned sideways and said in a displeased tone, "Host, you're really arrogant. You're not even satisfied with this." He suddenly split. What an idiot. But after Jun Changshao finished speaking, he sat down dejectedly. He wasn't used to the absence of that annoying retort. No matter if it's poison, crash, or malfunction, it should be able to solve it. Jun Changshao took a deep breath and summoned the spacetime worm. He put his hands on his knees and said, "It's just 2 years of weakness. It'll only take 7 or 8 days even if it's 100 times faster, wait." He frowned and said, "How long can I accelerate in this mid-grade spacetime secret realm?" The low-grade spacetime secret realm could only accelerate 50 times for 3 days per month. This mid-grade spacetime secret realm could accelerate 100 times. It couldn't be that he could only accelerate for 6 days per month, right? It's useless to think about it. Host, let's take it one step at a time. Jun Changshao suddenly said in the tone of the split system. As he spoke, he became melancholy. This kind of melancholy became stronger and stronger as the days passed. When he had nothing to do, he would always split himself into the system. It was very silly and sad to sit alone in the secret realm and talk to himself. However, what made Jun Changshao gratified was that 6 days had passed outside, and he was still able to stay in the secret realm without being expelled. It seems that it's not just 6 days. If there's no time limit, it would be great to be able to cultivate in there all year round. On the 7th day, the feeling of weakness in Jun Changshao's body was suddenly swept away, and a strong aura of a great sage emerged from his body. Pa! He stood up and covered his face with his hands as he laughed strangely. This man was back again. After the sword and martial saints recovered, Jun Changshao did not leave the spacetime secret realm. This was because he needed to confirm whether the mid-grade spacetime secret realm had an unlimited flow or a fixed time limit. On the 8th day. On the 9th day. On the 10th day, Jun Changshao and the spacetime worm were forcefully sent back to the outside world. Sigh. He shook his head and said, "It's only 10 days." To be able to accelerate 100 times and last for 10 days, this was undoubtedly very satisfying. What else could Gosheng not be satisfied with? Looking at the sleeping and pocket-sized spacetime worm, Jun Changshao was speechless. It's been at least 3 years in there, and this guy still hasn't woken up. Especially the system, that idiot. Wasn't it just poison, crash, garbled code, and malfunction? If it couldn't recover in 3 years for such a small matter, how could it have the nerve to call itself the strongest system? Or perhaps, the time acceleration had no effect on this guy, so it seemed that 3 years had passed inside, but in reality, only 10 days had passed like in reality. Forget it, forget it. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "I'll just rely on myself." He would not become completely out of his wits just because the system did not appear. Swoosh! He reached out and removed the spell formation he had set up, got up, and left the cave. However, just as he stepped out, a notification sounded in his ears, ding. The system's auxiliary punishment has ended. Restarting. Loading 10%. 20%. 100%. Ding. The system's auxiliary punishment has been successfully loaded. Ding! All functions of the strongest Sect system have been activated. All programs are operating normally. Hearing the series of mechanical notifications, Jun Changxiao's face turned black with question marks. Fuck your grandpa. At this moment, the long-awaited voice that made people gnash their teeth in anger exploded in their ears with a deafening decibel. The next time you fucking use that broken stone statue, I curse you to be alone for the rest of your life. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.